Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Stridiron.
Please remain standing for a brief moment of silence. Thank you.
Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Duray? Ms. Green? Mr. Howard? Mr. Lamar? Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Mineo?
Here.
Mrs. Straight-Iron?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Are the students ready?
Dr. Freeman Mack? You're up.
Board members, with your permission, I'd like to move the student presentation up. They're mostly seniors, and they really need to go home to study hard for their exams, which are tomorrow, I believe, most of them. Dr. Freeman Mack.
Introduce her.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Freeman Mack will be introducing our students who will be sharing their presentation about social justice. I have to say I had an opportunity to observe some of this at Marist, and I was so proud of our students. So you're in for a treat. We have a small sampling. Dr. Freeman Mack.
Good evening. Madam President, our Superintendent, Dr. Campbell, and board members and Executive Cabinet, I have the privilege to introduce you to Ms. Kulisek. These are some of her students in her classroom. She's been in a 2-year cohort doing work with Dr. Javon Hunter, and this is the product of that, so please enjoy.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Silver Williams Kulisek, and I'm an English teacher at Newburgh Free Academy. I'm also a product of Newburgh and Lawrence City School Districts, and I've been teaching for almost 20 years. I teach African American literature, multicultural literature. Thank you to all the board members and everyone. Superintendent, for having us today. I'm very excited because our students worked hard on this presentation. We started out, when I teach African American and multicultural literature, one of the things that kept coming up is the students would read about specific topics. We would go into some of the classics, Zora Neale Hurston or read something by Amy Tan, Ken Liu, and a lot of the times they were like, can we talk about current issues? Can we please talk about current issues? And it just wasn't enough to give them the opportunity to have like a current events day, right? We needed to do more. And in doing the cultural relevant education training with Dr. Javon Hunter, he sparked my interest in wanting to do more with the students, and it needed to be student-led. So the title of their research project is called Newburgh Ales Cured by Folk Tales. So this is just a cute, a little review of it. Ale is to trouble or afflict someone in mind or body, and the cure is to relieve a person's body or a group from the origin of pain or trouble. These are some of the social issues. I just want to let you all know some of our students couldn't be here tonight because they're seniors and they had to work, and they worked very hard to help out their family members, and I'm extremely proud of them. So some of the social issues are self-awareness, access to ELL teachers, lack of access to health care to immigrants, gentrification leading to unhoused and transient students, gun violence, educational bias towards students of color, addiction and its effects on children, and gang and gun violence. These are the titles of some of their stories. And you all should have a sheet in front of you. So if you guys could pull that sheet out. It was a little activity, and this is kind of how we got started with it. They passed it around. I think number 1 was circle your preferred superpower. So I asked all the students, this was one of the assignments for the day, select your superpower. If you could have one, what would it be and why? And some examples are like, flight, teleportation, telekinesis. And then they had to list one social issue that was specific to Newburgh because it was important. We decided that, we were going to write stories, folk tales. We studied some Zora Neale Hurston, and we wanted to write folk tales so that their 8-year-old selves would be able to enjoy them, and how better than by connecting to the community. So you guys will hear a lot of different specific places, the setting in Newburgh. For example, you might hear about the Ritz Theater, or you might hear about Audrey Carey Park, and your 8-year-old self is like, oh, I know that. Landers Street, oh yeah, I know that. And then came the part about the solutions. And the question number 3 that you guys have is, how would you use your superpower to fix your selected issue? So the characters in these stories use their superpowers to fix the selected issues. And then the real hard part, and the work continues because it lists one real world solution. But the importance was to be able to just have everybody start thinking about these issues that we have and addressing them. We feel like the younger people, that they have the exposure and the access to be able to, speak about these things and think about them, the better off we are. So I'm going to introduce our first student. Our first speaker this evening is Simone Fallon.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone got here safely. I'm going to start off by reading my story first because it's a pretty long story. This is called Jackie's Enchanted Etches. Mama said that I didn't need to know my daddy. She said my daddy only needed to know that me and Tony were safe. Tony is my big old brother. He towers over me and my mama. He's quite handsome. At least that's what Mama says. All my friends like to watch my brother. They adore his curly, sandy brown hair and his sun-kissed face full of freckles. But for me, I just have a milk chocolate face with black curls everywhere. Mama says I'm the most beautiful little girl she ever done see. She twists my hair tightly and then kisses my forehead. That was a year ago. It's weird how fast things can change in a year. Mama stopped working at St. Luke's. We live in a run-down apartment building with stinky, mean old tenants. In Newburgh, that's all we can afford at the moment because the rent is too high. Mama needs lots of rest because she was hit in a hit and run. Mama's legs aren't the same. She can barely stand. I'm mostly alone every day, just me and my etches in my tiny old room. The cracks in my ceiling keep me company if my drawings aren't around. Big brother doesn't come home much either. He only comes home in the mornings to make me breakfast, and sometimes sleeps at night if he had a long shift. I don't always like it, being by myself. My drawings sometimes hold me in their arms as I cry. I cry big old tears that sometimes fuzz up my drawings' arms and hands. They don't mind, though. I asked them one day if they could help me get my brother home. I was in a lot of pain, and my elbow was really hurting. The drawings nodded and leaped into the air. They flew like a crane out the window, into the sky, past Broadway and over to NFA Main. That's where my brother is. He's a senior. He was outside playing soccer with his friends according to the drawings. My brother sat down and was drinking some water when the drawings came by to tell him the problem. Big brother was scared. He'd never seen drawings come to life. He wondered if anyone else could see the drawings too. They said no. They swept him off his feet, and they were off to head back home to me. Mama was in the back room rocking on her rocking chair and looking around like a scary old squirrel. As she itched, I watched her intently. I wanted to ask Mama for help, but she seemed like she was waiting for something or someone. I nestled back into my room and waited as the pain grew worse. Finally, my big brother flew in. My drawings nodded at me and then nestled back into their lovely white bed. My brother held me and helped me recover. This became a constant thing where whenever I felt sad and lonely or Mama didn't want to play, I'd draw my 9 friends and they'd help me. I have enchanted powers that only my big brother can see. I love it. Tony one day suggested I make an art gallery where I can present my art to people. It seemed like fun, and even Mama was on board. She said I could make a lot of money. This was the first time Mama wore a fancy dress and was able to walk with her cane outside the house. I was so happy that I drew my friends once more. However, my friends tried to stop me. They said I was in trouble with Mama. I didn't understand. They always helped me, but now they're telling me that Mama's bad? That's mean. I pushed past them and made it to the Ann Street Gallery off Broadway. So many people were there, including Tony and his girlfriend, Patty, who were there waiting for me. Tony seemed upset. I asked him what was wrong, and he said that I shouldn't worry about anything. Big Brother is just happy to see me happy. However, I felt something was missing. More like someone. Mama. Mama was nowhere to be found. I looked in the back, the front, and the sides, and I just couldn't find Mama. Were my friends right about Mama? I jumped into one of my paintings to find out. A flow of different colors splashed my face, and I saw all my friends in a corner playing a game. They saw me and hugged me. They knew I was upset and helped me find Mama. She was in the alley near the gallery. She seemed itchy again, but now she's not alone. She had other itchy friends. I'm upset she left. I thanked my friends, and they helped me out of the painting. Everyone in the gallery gazed at me with shock and wonder. Then they clapped. Tony and Patty ran up to me and hugged me tightly. They were scared, but happy I was okay. I cried in their soft arms. I was happy I had good friends like them, too. I told Tony what I saw later that night. Tony knew already and was sad I had to see Mama that way. He told me he's tried everything to help Mama, but she refuses to help herself. Tony called Auntie Joy in Buffalo. That way I can keep drawing and go to an art school there. Auntie rushed over as fast as she could. She was so sad that she saw our apartment so run down. She was happy to take us home, but first Mama had to be put in what Tony called a place for people to become healthy and happy. So kind of like a hospital, but for itchy people. I kissed Mama goodbye, and she said she'd come for us when she's better. I'm currently sitting down at my desk in my happy pink room. Lots of lights twinkle in my lovely room. I draw my friends once more and feel their warm embrace, and Tony sits on my bed with Patty, watching my friends dance around the room. So, thank you. So, the social issue I chose was parental drug addiction, general neglect of children, and poverty. And the reason I chose this was because I knew some of my friends who are suffering from the same kind of form of neglect or poverty. And it's very intriguing how they grow up because I didn't personally grow up like that. And hearing their facts about what they're living through is kind of sad. And I wanted to write something that portrayed that with the help from them. So the statistical data is, according to the Orange County government, the population in poverty from 2017 in Orange County is 12.2%. Those specifically are of non-Hispanic Black population with the highest rate, as you can see from the graph, which is very sad to think about, as some of the cases are from people who are kids who constantly get picked up from that household, which is also extremely sad. So I thought that was something that needed to be shown. My proposed solution for this is some form of counseling with certain students or children who live in a lower income part of Orange County, see if they need some form of help, such as a community leader or a therapist. We also need more mental health resources. More mental health resources, especially after what happened during the quarantine and COVID. A lot of young teens like myself are suffering with mental health issues, and mental health resources such as institutions and therapy could benefit us a lot, especially as younger teens are going to be growing up and feeling like they don't have the help that they need. Also, more restrictions on drugs for minors, because I see that a lot in my school. drug abuse is very apparent. So I interviewed two questions for three individuals. Why do you think some children experience neglect from their parents and others don't? What do you think are some solutions to parental drug abuse? What comes to mind when you think of drug abuse and why? So I asked one of my teachers, Angelo De La Rosa, and he answered for question 3, what comes to mind when you think of drug abuse and why? He says, unstable, irresponsible, depression, and they need to seek help. I think most of us have someone in our family that's troubled. It affects us all, and I feel sad for people struggling with drug addiction. I asked another student of mine, Jasmine Warner, and she answered to question 1, why do you think some children experience neglect from their parents and others don't? She answered, I think everyone stems from their parents' childhood, generational trauma. And then I asked one of the speakers that's coming up today, actually, Talia De La Rosa, question 2, what do you think are some solutions to parental drug abuse? She stated, definitely rehab should be the top priority. I think separating kids from the household could also work too. Maybe an intervention as well with the family and friends of the person in question. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
That's the clicker right there. All right.
I'm glad I did. Oh, yeah, of course. By the way, I am an MBK fellow. And I'm proud to be an MBK fellow, too. So for MBK, for those who might not know who MBK is basically, the way I look at it, is a family of people that'll come together, and if there's any problem that might be on our mind, we come together and we talk about the problem that might be on our mind, and we solve it together, so we come together, we're problem solvers, we rise up for each other, right? That's just what we do. It's something like, but, can I proceed or? My brother's keeper. My brother's keeper, MBK. All right, cool. There we go. All right, here we go. So we got our slides here. So we're gonna go through them step by step, slow process. Ready? So self maturation. Oh wait, hold up. Could somebody refresh my slides? Because I fixed a couple of things. I don't see it. I don't know. Can somebody refresh the slides, please? I don't know who.
You may have to go with this, James. You might have to go with.
But I fixed everything.
He's trying.
Patience, yeah. I fixed it, miss. I fixed it. I know, so just... All right,
James,
go
it
back,
may
go
not
back.
refresh.
Okay, let's work with what we got.
Thank you, sir.
Need to be flexible.
Yeah. How you go back?
Yeah, right there. He's going
All
to
right,
do it.
all right, cool.
Hold on.
Let's walk through it.
You can start talking while he's doing it. You can read your story first if you like.
All right, I can fill them in on my story. The visuals is coming though. Be patient. All right. So, Azusi. This story is called "The Transformation of Azusi." So, it goes a little something like this. Azusi arises from her slumber as a young goddess, but not realizing that she is infinitely interconnected to anything and everything that is natural to nature, the cosmos, and the whole multiverse. Everyone outside of Azusi sees that she is the creator of all, where her divine masculine, feminine, and source energy. Azusi in Newburgh, where duality and separation exists. Azusi in Newburgh, where most of the gods and goddesses live within the confines of space and time. Azusi in Newburgh, where most of the gods and goddesses do not realize their own potential to create change on a micro and macro level. Azusi sitting in a park on a bench at Farrington and Chambers Street, enjoying the sun, and then she realizes that a caterpillar crawls onto her shoulder, and she gets this message from a caterpillar that was crawling on her, and this caterpillar gives her vivid flashes of the issues and conflicts in her life and herself and society, and also gets these flashes of all the solutions that she can apply to herself and share with others so that they too can have the opportunity to do better from that moment moving forward. So as Azusi realizes that she has been living wrong, she instantly pays attention to the present moment, and she realizes that there is so much self-discipline and self-growth to experience and to share with others. And each one of us should be reaching one of us to reform this alliance that we always had with each other. And now that Azusi steps back, she sees clearly that she can do anything about this. She can do something about this. So Azusi knows that she isn't alone and she will never be alone. She is reaching out to her people about what she knows. Now Azusi begins to fast. She begins to meditate. Azusi begins to look into her books that she can apply to herself. Azusi begins to treat herself with more respect gradually over time, and that self-respect reflects to any and everyone outside of her. Azusi begins to do more physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual practices. Azusi becomes more present with her passions and her true purpose in life by going within herself to know the truth. Azusi begins to look into the anatomy of ourselves and to truly see the science behind our existence. Azusi's God-given power is not only telekinesis, where she can move energy with her mind, but also abilities like the Avatar, the Last Airbender. If you know, you know. Azusi is using her powers to expand upon her consciousness, to challenge old belief systems with respect and firmness. Azusi is using her power to seek answers, using her powers to understand before being understood, using her powers to build compassion within herself and her beloved people, using her power to align with her purpose. Azusi is using her power to alchemize, meaning transmute negative energy into positive energy, regardless of where it comes from, simply just using our power to uplift one another rather than seeking to attack and bring down one another, figuratively and literally, by any means necessary. So, y'all can see my little designs that I put up there, whatever, you know, my little touch to it. I can explain the symbolism, though. So, right here, we got the Ankh. Some of us might know what it is, some of us might not. It's the symbol of life. It symbolizes masculine energy and feminine energy, and then, you know, boom, that's life. So oh yeah, and that girl right there, y'all might be wondering, that's Azusi. Her name is Azusi. So you can say hi to her if you want. But, you know what I'm saying? So look, so we got right here the butterfly. We got the caterpillar, the cocoon. You got the transformation. It's just, you can see, it symbolizes her transformation and her growth, her process, you know? It symbolizes who she's becoming and where she came from into who she's coming and who she's becoming. So, and then you also got the yin-yang symbol, the balance. I love that symbol. You know what I mean? It's the symbol of balance, you know? And we need to learn how to have balance a lot too. But look, we're gonna get into some more of this. Look, self-maturity should be the #1 goal for those who want to evolve, grow, and change in order to be a better version of themselves, independently and especially as a team. Thank you. We got more. Why did I personally select this issue? I personally selected this issue because if we do not solve this problem, then the problem will only grow to be bigger than it already is. And not everybody is all the way independent. For example, some people may be able to move their body independently, but might not be able to think clearly or to figure out problems independently, and vice versa. So that's why we're here. We're a team. So my proposed solution, fasting. And this was a GIF, too. It looked way cooler because it was moving and everything, but it's cool, it's cool. So my proposed solution, we got fasting, which clears the mind and the body. We have meditation with anti-aging effects. We could practice reading books that we can apply to ourselves on our daily lives. I have a book of solutions that we have. That's just not that, you know. You feel me? I had to get whatever I wanted to get in there, but I have a book of solutions, y'all. That's the point I'm making here, is that I have a book of solutions, and if I share these solutions, and we come together, and we do this together, then we're unstoppable, period. There's nothing they can do with the numbers. It's numbers, y'all. We come together, simple. We unite. We just better that way. Simple.
Let's give it up again for James Garland, please. Thank you guys for being so patient, but I'm sure you're definitely enjoying these students and their hard work. Next we have Talia De la Rosa. Read the story first, whichever one you want. Okay.
Hi. Okay. The story is called Blossom's Dilemma, and it's about a young girl. Thank you. That's she's going through like an unhoused like situation because her tree gets like cut down. She lives in a tree, and it's kind of like a metaphor for like, you know, like her house is like she can't live there anymore because they're gonna work on it and make everything better again. So here it is. Down by Water Street, in the loving community of Newburgh, New York, many homes stood tall with residents who were able to boast about how they made it and lived securely in their own home. Next to these houses, with an abundance of families and people with different stories, a tall tree stood higher than any other house on the block. The tree, which slumped over the buildings on each side and disrupted the idea of what many realtors had envisioned for the town, also happened to be the home of a peculiar little girl named Blossom. Blossom was always grateful to live up in her towering lush tree. Her gratitude often spread on the smile she wore over her face. One day, however, she heard a ruckus outside. The shaking of the hammock she laid in caused her to curiously investigate the source of this commotion. So she made her way down the wooden steps on her branch and peered around the corner, squinting from the glint of the perfect sunshine. A man in a worker's hat used an axe to thwack, thwack, thwack Blossom's once happy, healthy tree. She panicked, waving her arms in a cautioning motion. "Stop, stop! That tree is my home. Please don't cut down my home, sir." That man halted his action and faced Blossom, puzzled. He then shortly returned to his job without a word. Blossom tried her best to yank the worker away from her tree, but the man wouldn't budge, as it was his job to destroy her home. The tall, lush home that disrupted the view of the captivating skyline. Blossom eventually gave up, throwing her draped sleeve over her face and wailing from her home. She then began to walk to a new place she could call home. Blossom's tears followed her for miles and miles. Her crying almost made her more exhausted than the walking had. But each location she spotted had either a happy owner or an impossible price range, something her tree never had as an issue. So where else could she possibly go? Upon a few more solemn miles, she found herself in a field surrounded by trees and a trail. It was interesting for sure, but she wanted a sense of community with sunny, smiling faces. A place with other trees seems uniform and perfect in its own way. But how could it possibly be the perfect place? Surrounded by pleasant music and neighbors that throw livening get-togethers, she sat down, feeling defeated, and looked down at the grass below her. A small fuzz of dandelion breezed past her, and as her eyes followed it, she was met with the sight of a beautiful, powerful-looking woman, standing tall just like her tree. The woman held out her hand for Blossom, allowing her to get herself off the ground. She made her purpose clear instantly. "My name is Delion. Why are you crying in my forest? Do you not enjoy the scenery?" Blossom wiped her tears and dusted her dress off. "This forest is beautiful, but it's no Water Street. I miss my home. I miss my tree." "There are hundreds, maybe thousands of trees in this park. Are you not satisfied?" Delion questioned. "It's not that. I would just prefer a community with many smiling faces. This is a park with many pleasant people that come and go every day, many children and happy families. Are you not satisfied?" "It's not that either. It's just not by the waterfront," Delion finished Blossom's thought. "Where exactly am I?" "Dear girl, you are in Algonquin Park, a beautiful park right here in the town of Newburgh." "Algonquin Park sounds different from my home by the waterfront. What if I don't find happiness here?" "If you are not satisfied, perhaps I can give you the power of flight so that we may see which tree in Newburgh is best for you." She waved her arm and casted her magic upon Blossom. The two then soared through the sky, high above over the town of Newburgh. Blossom's eyes lit up at the sight of many people closely knit in their shared community. There were so many places to choose from. She spotted many beautiful homes and nice lawns, many tall trees just like the one she lived in, each place unlike her old home. She frowned at the thought of having to move once again, but if they could find a livable tree, she knew she'd be grateful in the end. They passed many restaurants and corner stores, rows of cars and sidewalks, other homes, small parks, highways, and heaps of people. Their quest to find the perfect tree for Blossom seemed to fail at each turn, however, as many of them didn't belong to just anybody. Upset at the thought of having to leave the waterfront, Blossom sighed. "I understand that it's not the same, but at Algonquin, the trees are for everyone. With time, we'll be able to fix the prices in Newburgh. I just know it," Delion said with hope. Her hope instilled hope into Blossom, bringing her journey to a new light. She felt that if she settled on Algonquin, she'd be stable and be able to look for something new and better for her in the meantime. So they returned to Algonquin, and the more time Blossom spent there, the more she realized that Algonquin was the place for her. And she was so fortunate to have somewhere to go, unlike others that struggled with housing. And thus, through living in a park, she was able to gradually make changes that better her community and speak with people in higher positions that could work out a solution to help make Newburgh a happier environment and one that houses transient students all over the city. And through this newfound gratitude and her charitable actions, Delion permanently gifted Blossom with the power of flight so she could reach students from all over Orange County and work to get them in affordable, comfortable houses. So up on the board, and that one too, there's these slides that I did basically summarizing like the whole meaning of the story and the folklore and why I did it. So the first slide is that the issue is transient students. And transient means passing through or staying at a place for a temporary amount of time. Like it's nothing stable, nothing permanent. And the reason that I made this story was because I have been through, unhousing before in the past. I didn't live in Orange County. I lived down in Long Island. But, when I moved up here, I had a stable place. And then over time, as I came to love that place, I had to leave because the price ranges were a little too high and, there was a lot of maintenance and we just had to go for the new people that were going to come in that would, pay more. And since then, I've been bouncing around, but I'm glad to say that I'm in a stable place, which is what a lot of students in Orange County and specifically Newburgh can't say. And it kind of upsets me because I know that pain that they're going through. And I also did interviews too in statistics surrounding how many transient students are in Orange County, if they're in there. Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh, thank you, sorry.
There you go.
Okay. So, in 2019, Orange County had the highest number of unhoused citizens in the Hudson Valley. That was since 2020. Our number of people without stable homes has decreased, as Dutchess's has risen significantly. However, Hudson Valley as a whole has a big housing crisis that needs to be solved, and I think it stems from gentrification and the rising of rent throughout the county, as our working wages stay the same. And even housed residents struggle to make rent in this region, and it only gets worse with the rise of greedy and even slum landlords that force residents to handle all the maintenance issues of houses they only occupy rather than own themselves. And this is a screenshot from the Mid-Hudson Valley Community Profiles website. And this is the total homeless persons or unhoused persons in the area. And Orange County has a bit of a lower amount compared to Dutchess since 2020. However, we've always been kind of in the high, which is a bit of an issue. And I think an issue that just the county overall just faces. And between 2017 and 2021, about 15% of children were living in poverty, which is only 2 points down from 2000, which was 17% at its highest. And poverty seems to be the highest in the Black community, with 22% of Black children facing homelessness and 17% of Hispanic children going through the same thing. This could be because of a financial and systematic advantage white homeowners tend to have in the housing market, though white homeowners, they have their own issues with housing as well, as there's 14% white children that are facing unhousing in the area. And it just seems to be an overall problem that we all share with the pricing. And I think the rise of inflation had a significant role in homelessness, especially in the Hudson, but there luckily have been an increase in local housing programs. However, much like Dutchess County's abundance in housing programs, such as Hudson River Housing, I think Orange County, specifically Newburgh, should have a program with a few wider reach, to more people and more resources, something that the home program for Orange County has been doing well with for a while. And over here in this picture is the percentage of children and youth in poverty, around here in the Hudson Valley. It seems to be increasing, which is a problem. So I did some interviews, the first one with my mother, and I asked her what comes to mind when she thinks of unhoused citizens in the Hudson Valley, specifically Orange County. And she told me that it's an ever-growing problem that needs to be rectified with more resources for the people that are unhoused. And to fix these problems, she thinks that leaders in the city should come together to figure out a plan and really buckle down to see how we can solve this, because unhoused transient citizens is an ever-growing problem. And the second interview was with Ms. Kulisek. I asked, have you been directly affected by the issues surrounding unhoused students? And she answered, coming from a large family, I've been unhoused before. As a professional now, I see the ramifications of gentrification in Newburgh and how the rent prices have gone up. People are being asked to pay higher rent, though their wages haven't even gone up, which is what a lot of people seem to think. And what do you think are some solutions to the housing crisis? She stated, one of the things I propose is that the city of Newburgh puts stricter policies in place before a property goes up on sale that's city-owned. The city residents should be allowed to purchase it first. so we know the money is going back into the community. Another thing that we have that helps homeless people are organizations like RIPCO and Habitat for Humanity. NACSD also helps to try and find unhoused students some homes as well. And this is the summary of the story, and with the link. And these are some pictures. So this is Blossom's Tree by Water Street, and those are all the buildings. As you can see, her house is in the way, so they had to chop it down. And this is Blossom in Algonquin Park. She's sad, so she's laying her head down, and she's there with Delion right there. That's the goddess, sort of, that like gives her the power of flight. So this is the story too. And these are the sources. So.
So Talia is our metaphoric, symbolic guru. And our last student is Serenity Robinson. Before Serenity speaks, I just wanted to let you guys know that there were supposed to be other students here, and some of the topics that they talked about, one of them was a lack of access for immigrant students for health care, and another one was two of them were gun violence and some of the issues that should be addressed.
Okay, hi everyone. I will be reading my story first. My title is Teachers Who Live and Look Like Me. One morning, Royalty woke up and was so tired from the night before, she had to watch her siblings do her chores, listen to her parents constantly arguing, and try and finish an essay for her English class with all the noise happening in the house. Royalty is getting dressed for school, and she is annoyed because she can't find an appropriate outfit. She goes downstairs for breakfast and hears her parents arguing again, so she storms out the house. As Royalty is walking up Chambers Street to the bus stop, she sees her best friend Kai. He sees the frown on her face and asks what's wrong. She tells him she's been having a bad morning and that her parents have been arguing a lot lately. Kai tells her everything is going to be okay and for her not to stress it. The bus finally comes. They get on and make their way to the empty seats in the back of the bus. They make their way to NFA, where they attend high school, and head upstairs to English class before they're late because the bus got to school later than usual. Ms. Bates, the English teacher, passes out the classwork and tells everyone to try the first 3 problems on their own as she does attendance. As everyone is doing their classwork, Ms. Bates asks for the essay she assigned for homework. Royalty panics because she wasn't able to finish the essay because of all the commotion going on in her house. She goes up to Ms. Bates and asks her for an extension. Ms. Bates says, the assignment is due today, no excuses. So I don't care about whatever reason you didn't do the assignment. In a rude tone. Royalty started getting mad and trying to explain to her why she wasn't able to finish the assignment. Still, Ms. Bates was being very insensitive and disrespectful towards Royalty and wasn't letting her explain. Kai comes up to try and calm Royalty down. Ms. Bates started getting loud with Kai and telling him to go sit down. She then threatens to call security and send them both to their admin if they didn't calm down and follow directions. Royalty says to Ms. Bates, you don't know me, you don't know what I go through. Karma is going to hit you in unexpected ways. God doesn't like ugly. Later that day, everyone was dismissed from school. Ms. Bates stayed back to grade work and to put together tomorrow's lesson. As she's leaving the school, she gets into a bad car accident. She suffers a head injury which left her hospitalized with a concussion. She woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed at Montefiore St. Luke Cornwall, delirious as to what happened to her. Dr. Roach informs her that she has been in a car accident and has a concussion. She screams out of confusion because she can hear information coming from his head. Dr. Roach ran some tests on her and diagnosed her with PIS, also known as Person's Inner Self Disease. He informed her that it's a rare condition after suffering from a head injury that is only temporary. Dr. Roach also informed her that it gives her the ability to read people's deep personal information without them having to say it. Ms. Bates gets discharged from the hospital and returns home to rest. The next morning, she gets up and heads to work to prepare for class. Royalty Kai and the rest of the kids are walking into the classroom and go straight to their assigned seats. Ms. Bates is looking all around the room, confused because she can hear all her students' deep thoughts. She looks at Royalty and all she can hear is, "I'm so tired of this. I'm afraid they're going to split up. I'm so stressed. I never have time to do things for myself because my father is always drinking and arguing with my mom." Royalty asks Ms. Bates why she's staring at her. She says nothing. "I am checking attendance." After class, Ms. Bates asks Royalty to stay back for a chat. Ms. Bates says to Royalty, "I would like to apologize for being disrespectful to you and not acknowledging what you've been going through." Royalty accepts her apology and also apologizes for using foul language towards her. Ms. Bates tells Royalty how her accident made her rethink how she lives her life and talks to people. Ms. Bates says from now on, she will take into consideration her students' feelings and will connect with them more deeply. She then gives Royalty an extension on her essay and offers her class time to do it. Royalty smiles and is very thankful for the second chance. PIS grants the power of empathy, which leads to grace and understanding. If there were more teachers afflicted with PIS, then students and teachers would be able to have better educational experiences. Thank you. Okay, the name, well, like the title of my thing is Educator Bias Towards Students of Color. There are larger racial disparities in tests and sources and suspensions between countries, between pro-white and anti-black bias among teachers. Approximately 0.55 standard deviations lower than white students on tests. That's the number that black students score based on white students. Black students have a 13 and 60% prediction probability of being suspended in and out of school, whereas white students have a 5% probability of being suspended either in and out of schools. The reason I chose this topic was because I felt like African American students receive backlash the way that they act towards teachers when they feel disrespected or that the teacher's not listening to what they have to say. I personally have been through a situation where I was in a class and a teacher was purposefully treating me different from other students in the class. And no one else took it into consideration. So I decided to take it upon myself to switch out of that class to be put into a different class so that my education won't be affected by this situation. Okay, so these are some drawings I did. I'm not very artistic, so don't mind it. But, but this is, on my left, it's a drawing of NFA High School main campus on Fullerton and South Street. Thank you very much. I haven't been living up here for that long, so I can't remember. And those are my characters, Kai, Royalty, and the teacher entering the school. The second drawing is St. Luke's Cornwall, where Ms. Bates was diagnosed with PIS. Okay, so some pro solutions that I suggest is students may receive issues going home. Students may receive issues going home mentally. And I think if you give students the options to go to their guidance counselor, then they will be able to open up more. Some students may feel comfortable opening up to other people. But I also feel like if teachers take into consideration, maybe try and do some activities, like say in the beginning of the school year, if they do some activities so that students get to know each other before the school year starts, because they are going to be in school in the same class with each other the whole school year, but also give the teacher some time to get to know their own students on a deeper level, get to know what they're going through, if they even feel like giving out that information. But also I feel like teachers should just make their students feel comfortable, for them to be able to explain to them if they feel a way. For example, Ms. Kulisek, she makes all of her students feel welcome and make them feel like they could come and talk to her about anything, especially me, because I've been through certain situations in school, especially with certain students. I came to her one day about a situation that I went through before we went on our trip to Marist College, because I felt the way about what was said to me. But also, but also for me, during that situation, most students will lash out, get into fights and stuff, but I held it together. I knew that I was better than what they said, and it didn't affect me as much. But I still needed to get it off my chest. I still wanted to hear someone else's opinion on how it went, because I still felt disrespected, and that what was said to me shouldn't have been said to me, especially if that person didn't know me and didn't know who I was and what I go through. So Ms. Kulisek reminded me of that, and I'm very thankful. And this is my story.
That wasn't on any of her slides. I just wanted to conclude the students' presentation with just saying one thing that they reiterated a lot over and over again, and it's exactly what I wanted them to get from this assignment, and it is solutions, solutions, solutions. And the only way that we get there is if we can identify certain issues, put a name to it, and then work together to be able to, address those specific issues. But all of these came directly from the students. These are their lived experiences. These are the lived issues that, they all have to address, or their classmates have to address daily. And it is so important for us to listen to them, right? Because in the beginning of the school year, I have a curriculum, but I said, you know what? They keep telling me, let's talk about what's going on right now, let's do this. And I had to say, you know what? I need to figure out how I'm gonna get this done and still be able to give them what they need. And this project and being able to take the course with Dr. Hunter, the culturally relevant education, is so important. And I truly, honestly believe that if more of my colleagues would join the program and take the program, Dr. Natasha McFreeman is phenomenal in facilitating it with us. It will only help our students. It will only create more solutions in the conversations. And to Dr. Campbell, I just wanted to let you know that Angie told me to split, where is she? Dr. Kimball. Angie couldn't be here today, Angie Alvarez, but she's the one that did hers on the need for more English language learner teachers, not just in Newburgh, but nationally. And she told me to tell you, because she had something else to do, that thank you so much for inspiring her. And she wants to become, she wants to go to the Culinary Institute. And when we went to the conference, Ms. Campbell was just telling her that she could come back and be the culinary teacher at NFA. And we do have teachers, a lot of them that are homegrown from Newburgh, but specifically Angie's space was English language learners having difficulties. And she said, well, the way that we're going to fix it is that we, you know, Ms. Campbell and the two of them were going back and forth. But she told me to tell you that she's going to be doing it and she's going to be coming back to let you know. But thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. You're so awesome.
Thank you, and it is my mantra. We're from Newburgh, and there are more of us coming. So we'll continue to grow our students and our staff population. I'm so excited about that. There's so much that I could say, sorry, but I know we had so many more speakers, but I have to say, you know, the messaging tonight really hit home, and I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for presenting tonight about a lot of issues and social issues that we're dealing with within our community and nationwide, and I'm looking forward to more. Thank you.
I also need Ms. Andrea Moriarty to come up with the students because you started the work with Dr. Hunter. Please.
No, not a question, Madam President. I just wanted to say, this is Newburgh. These are our scholars. This is the greatness that exists in our district, and this is just a pixel of a big picture. And I just want to say I am so thoroughly impressed with the level and the thought process that was put into each of these presentations. And I want to say this to all the adults here, all the people on the board, all the administrators, all the people in the community. We need to listen to our young people. We sit around, we're around young people so much, and we think that they don't listen, they're not hearing, they're not seeing what's going on around them. But what these young people are living and what they're going through, the pain that they have, we need to hear what they're talking about, because those subjects that they talked about this evening are real. It's really going on in this community and in this world. And we need to understand what kids, when they get to school, what they're coming from. We need to understand what are impacting these children's lives. And at times, I think that we're so on the adult mode, we don't think about what our children are really going through, what's really impacting their ability to learn or not learn. And I think that we need to have more vision. We need to be more visual. We need to listen more. And we need to really understand that our children are hurting. They're hurting. We're going around talking all this adult minutia. Our kids are struggling. Our kids are hurting. Our kids are crying out to us. We better start listening.
Board members, I have to ask your permission. We need to have a short exec. I'm really sorry, but I've got to talk to you about something that might come up. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: potential litigation and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Roll call.
Ms. Green? Yes. Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron? Yes. Mr. Walker? Yes. Mr. Duray?
And comments on agenda items, please refer to the regulations regarding discussion and comment. The first person I have is Mr. Matthew DeGraw.
Good evening. My name is Matthew DeGraw. I'm a business owner and teacher in the district. However, my connection to the community is not limited to these current business and professional pursuits. In fact, I have a deep, intimate, lifelong connection to this place. I was born a few blocks from here, and I attended the primary school on Washington Street, Meadow Hill, North, and NFA. I graduated from the district with 5 varsity letters, a solid academic foundation, an understanding of the value of community service, and a belief that I would be successful regardless of what I chose to pursue. It was certainly a wonderful way to begin my journey into adulthood, and I thank the memories of my parents and the district for preparing me so well for a rich and productive life each day. About 15 years ago, after concluding some other professional pursuits and completing one of the nation's most competitive teaching fellowships while in New York City, I heard of a vacancy at Meadow Hill School. And while I loved my work in the city, the vacancy here had a special place in my heart. You see, not only was I a student at Meadow Hill, my mother was also a teacher there until the day cancer took her from us while I was still a Newburgh student. It's my hope that Ms. Mineo remembers my mother, Judith DeGraw, and working with her all of those years ago. I was so proud to work where both my mother taught and where I spent time as a student. And today I'm equally proud to work at Heritage, where my wife also teaches. Like I said, my ties to the community run deep. I understand such ties and commitment to the community run deep for several of you. As an example, Mr. Forgett, our deputy superintendent, graduated from NFA with one of my older brothers, and I deeply respect the decision he made regarding the issues being considered this evening. However, with each administrative hire, both at central office and at the building level, too often those with long-term experiences with the district are slipping away. Many of the senior staff I see here this evening do not share the same local history. Too few here have the institutional knowledge or personal experience to remember when our academic programs were jewels admired by neighboring districts, and I fear it's leading to a disconnect from the reality I live each day in our district's classrooms. Whether it's academics, views on discipline, or the professional treatment of our employment terms, there is a growing disconnect. I rarely miss a recording of your meetings or an opportunity to read the minutes. Considerable time is spent discussing equity. Despite what some of you think, it's not a new concept. 5 decades ago, early in my mother's career, she was a member of the NTA who chose to strike. She stood literally and figuratively shoulder to shoulder with her colleagues for true equity, and she fought to be recognized as a professional in the classroom and in the community. And it worked. Though the strike occurred just before I was born, I heard about it often in my formative years. My mom was very proud of taking that stand. What's happening here tonight, it's not equity, it's the furthest thing from it. Contracts of several senior staff have considerable time remaining, but they're being extended or altered without a publicly disclosed rationale. From what I've been able to glean from posted documents, additional duties have not been added, but at least in certain cases, raises have been attached. In true loyalty to the concept of equity, let's compare that to my position and that of the 1,000 other NTA members. Our contract expires in less than a month, but the generosity and speed with which you are moving this evening doesn't seem to extend equitably to members of the NTA. In current negotiations with my union,
The district is seeking changes that would require me to attend additional longer meetings outside of my existing contractual hours, increase the number of evening activities I'm compelled to attend, increase the cost of my health insurance, increase the number of classes I'm required to cover without additional compensation, and you hope to make other changes that will erode my current working conditions and available personal time. Does this sound like equity? It certainly isn't in any sense of my understanding of the concept. These demands come as this board is struggling to find qualified teaching candidates in this era of shortages, low teacher morale, and continued difficulties lingering from a period of pandemic where we were all expected to become technical wizards and SEL experts overnight. This approach is not just inequitable, it's simply unfair to extend these contracts while asking teachers to give up even more of our most precious and finite resource, our time. Please take a moment to reflect, reconsider, and table these extensions just for a couple of weeks. Allow a fresh board to take a look at this issue with fresh eyes. I thank you, and I wish each of you a pleasant evening.
Mr. Matthew Abate.
Sorry, we're good? Sorry. First things first, I would like to say that I saw the agenda on Friday. I kind of looked at it myself, thought about it. Some of you I know personally, and I was talked to some people, and I decided to try to come up with some response. I have been a teacher here since probably, I don't know, a while. Went to Newburgh schools, lived in Newburgh my entire life, worked with the CSEA guys in college as a summer intern. And, I wrote this letter. Now, I did see at 5:30 Dr. Manny Campbell's email, which addressed many things that I had said. I sent you guys the letter, so I will read the letter that I sent to you, but there are obviously some adjustments. So I just wanted to say that I'm writing this letter in reference to the posted agenda for the regular Board of Education meeting on June 6th of today. The agenda items I was writing to discuss, one of which was removed, 4.6, 4.7, and 4.8. I want to preface my letter by just saying that I am not personally against any of you as individuals. I know some of you personally, and you are wonderful people. If I was in your situation as those individuals, I would have my own personal feelings. But I am disappointed with the workings of the Board of Education. Regarding the extensions posed at the meeting, I cannot speak directly to the qualifications, performance, or expectations of a negotiating timeline, some of which you did outline in your email, with regard to the executive cabinet members. However, I can speak to the overall message these extensions send and the lack of effective communication and abhorrent behavior of members of the Board of Education. The district has been in negotiations with its two largest unions, the NTA and CSEA, for some time now, and has had many labor issues that are yet to be resolved. The NTA was told to accept a Band-Aid one-year extension last year due to the changing political climate of the Board of Education, of which you did note in your email, but yet you are offering three-year extensions here for members. So my question, which I hope you can extrapolate on in your time, is to explain the timeline for those extensions, why you want those extra years. And I know you can't necessarily comment on the NTA negotiations and CSCA negotiations, but as Mr. Ray Harvey from the NAACP said last month, because I do watch your meetings, make it make sense to us. Regarding effective communication, the district is a $300+ million operation with a full-time director of communication. Why hasn't the plan to extend central office cabinet members been communicated to the public? Our previous superintendent had, for his a 2020 vision. So if you have such vision for these cabinet members, just tell the public why you need them. So I'm so sorry, I got lost here. Please use this meeting, as you did with your email, to explain your decision-making process. And again, as Mr. Harvey had said, just make it make sense to us. Lastly, regarding abhorrent behavior of the Board of Education members, you all took an oath to never vote in manners that could directly benefit you, your friends, or your family. If you are friends with some of these individuals, do the right thing and abstain. I'm not saying to vote against them, but abstain. I respect the fact that you are all volunteers and cannot nor should you not look for compensation from the school district operations, but please respect the district of which you represent. Regarding behavior in general, the divisions do need to end, as many of these audience members have said to you numerous times. Posturing on social media, grandstanding, spreading propaganda, exaggerations of our successes and our failures need to stop. Mr. Howard talked about the students that were up here, 3 of which I've taught, who are all wonderful. That's real, but the stuff that we put on social media isn't real, okay? I'm sorry, I lost it again, I apologize. We cannot turn Newburgh into something it's not, but what we can do, and what I have said to those of you who I talk to in person, whenever anyone asks, I will always gladly give them my opinion, is all we can do every day is get up and try to do the best we can with each day we have. All right? The time is precious, but the time you spent fighting amongst yourselves about who gets what is time that's unproductive. All right? And that's all I really wanted to say to you guys. I apologize for taking your time up, but the community does need you to come together to improve the lives of everyone in the district, not just special interests. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Victoria Boulay-Boucher.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to preface this with, I am speaking on behalf of my mother, Debbie Boulay, but if I have time, I will add a little bit at the end from my own mind. So my name is Victoria Boulay-Boucher, and I am speaking on behalf of my mother, Debbie A. Boulay, soon to be inducted Board of Ed member who could not attend tonight. The Vice President of the United States of America earns $235,100, and this salary has been frozen by Congress since 2014. Those of you board members who intend to vote yes on paying the superintendent $300,000 and guaranteed annual raises, monthly dividends of $650, etc., cannot possibly be serious. The superintendent is satisfied to pay cafeteria workers and clerks who have dedicated their lives in this district for decades barely above minimum wage when she asked for a 5.5% raise off of $270,000 without any merit in the eyes of many. The reasons to deny this request are many. The reasons why this showed up right before a board meeting without going through the Personnel Committee are highly suspect. Never again after 7/6. And if you have any sense of a moral or ethical compass, say no now. Debbie Boulay. I would like to add that I did receive the email sent out today right before the meeting. And in that email was a lot of comparisons to other districts. Perhaps the superintendent's salary should be based off of the graduation rate compared to those districts. Thank you.
Mr. David Ryan.
Thank you. My address I gave you this afternoon. I have some prepared thoughts like the people that came before me. I'm speaking to some of my peers again, and they said, you're going to go and give them hell again. I said, no, I'm going to go and speak what we've all been talking about at the coffee table here. So I got some notes, and I'm going to just speak to it and just know that I think everybody already said everything. If you don't get the message we told you last time, bad idea. Don't do it. So did I get my money's worth tonight? No doubt. I saw exactly what I've been paying for 25 years in my house that I wanted. I wanted students like that, and thank God I have 3 of them as well. So I thank you for that. Absolutely. Great job. Kudos. But this is malarkey, so why am I here, right? I'm going to speak about, I guess, well, we know, right? 4.6 and so on. I, too, know several of you, and I would not speak ill of your professional ability. You have a contract. You have a colleague who led by example by withdrawing themselves from consideration. Lead by example. Pay the teachers first. Pay the CEA first. Don't incur new debt till you pay the debt that's owed to your community. What are you doing with my money? Oh my God, I don't want to get in trouble. I mean, this is completely facetious, but I'm Jewish. Please, don't waste my money yet. Maybe it's not even a waste. Maybe I shouldn't say waste because I'm speaking from the hip here. Don't go with your largesse yet. Wait till the kids are taken care of. I heard it from Mr. Howard. He said it best. It's about the children, the children, the children. It sounds like it's about me. Your turn will come, but not tonight. There was a clear message sent to you by the community when they voted. Are you looking to nullify our vote? I'm speaking directly to the president of the board. Are you looking to nullify the vote of the public? They said, thank you very much. Your service has been wonderful. Thank you. They didn't say, go bring them on for another 3 years. We can't wait. No, they said, thank you. Go peacefully into the night. And that's all we're asking of you. You lost. It's over. Just next year. But not with our money. Not with their money. Because I'm sure there's not a soul in this room. Well, maybe there's. I shouldn't say that. There's probably some people in this room. But I'm sure there's not very many. If you did, like I think the majority would tell you, are you cuckoo? Raises at the top when you haven't settled with the teachers and the CSEA, the people that keep the buildings running? My wife would shoot me if I did that. If I started going out and buying like an ATV before I paid off the SUV. It just doesn't work. We bought steak and lobster. We have a great superintendent. She's hitting it out of the park. Sorry, you're not Jeter. You can't come back and say, yo, I want more. This is Newburgh. There's enough suffering. Why are you taking off the table? I'm going to use every bit of these minutes to kind of encourage you. There's a time to get a raise, but please, I don't know if I'm distracting you over there or something I said that's offending you, but I don't know. I mean, it's straight up. It's just not the time to negotiate. We made a deal. We'll see you in 2.5 years or a year and a half, whatever your contract expires. There's a period in there. There's no metric. There's no metric that says you achieved this much more. We didn't have an agreement that if you achieved this much, we'll pay you more. And now you want to go back to the beginning? I'm going to go back to the beginning. The children, the children, the children, not you.
Mrs. Melissa Lamar. Okay. Would anybody else like to address the board? We have time for one more for agenda items, and then we go to non-agenda items. Could you state your name and say where you live?
My name is Lindsay Nosek. I live in New Windsor. Lived in Newburgh most of my life, and I'm the parent of Carter Pruitt. He attends Heritage Middle School. He's in 6th grade. Don't really know what that was all about. I don't care about how much people make. I'm here for the welfare, security, and safety of my son, and that is all that is important to me. My son struggled at Heritage, and I'm going to have to leave a lot out because I didn't realize that I only have 4 minutes, but with bullying, and I have sent several emails on multiple occasions, at least 12, that have gone unanswered by faculty, staff, and administration at Heritage. Some have been answered with phone calls, which I'm starting to learn is a tactic for dismissal and disregard because I don't have a paper trail. My son was attacked on the bus verbally. People found out that he is part African American, which he is proud of. And they told him that he is not really part black unless he stands up for the whole bus to hear him say the N-word. And when he refused to do that because he doesn't want to disrespect his ancestors, he was slandered. This was brought to Miss Administrator, and she told me that as far as the cameras could see, there was nothing to indicate that that had actually happened, and she couldn't understand why he would want to do that. But to me, he's 11. It's a question of his identity, and it's something that he's proud of. That's just one thing. He's on a 504 because he has severe anxiety disorder and PTSD. His 504 I have never seen, and it's implemented in October. It's now June. I've never seen it, and the services that he asks and requests for are denied to him. I just want to know what we can do to fix this, because also there was an incident on Thursday where he was assaulted by 2 kids. He called me screaming. I was around the corner. I came home. He told me 2 kids hit him with a closed fist on the left side and one on the right side, and they ran away. I called the principal immediately, and she didn't have answers for me. She told me she would handle it tomorrow. That was not good enough for me. I told her that I wanted it handled immediately in the morning because my fear was that he was going to go to school the next day and they were going to assault him again. She told me to send him to her in the morning, which I did. He came home and told me that she dismissed him and said she would handle it at the end of the day. When he said he saw those 2 kids again, they antagonized him and said, "Ha, ha, ha, I am not suspended and I will slap you again." I questioned her today on this when I called to follow up because she promised me a phone call yesterday that I never got. She told me she had no answers for me and that she could not discuss disciplinary action regarding the other children, which is not anything I was looking for. I just wanted to know how this could possibly be acceptable, and I have yet again gone without answers. My son comes home and expresses to me that Heritage makes him have suicidal ideations. And I specifically remember emailing the superintendent earlier in the year who forwarded my email to Kate Farrell, who promised that the school would give me the 504 for him due to his clinical diagnoses, and that would be by December 2nd, and that never happened. Then it was pushed to December 12th, and that never happened. It wasn't until I threatened to come down to the Board of Education, where we had worked with Carter's doctors to implement certain things that he is still not receiving. And like I said, I could care less about how much money anybody makes in here. I want my son to be safe. I picked him up for a doctor's appointment. And when I walked into the building, there was no security, and the door was wide open, and I could have had a rifle. So there are way more concerns to me than the amount of money that people make. And I am sure that you are worthy of your salary and that you work hard. But I need you to show me that change is going to happen today with my child and that you care about us that much. Show me that.
We're now moving to the section of the agenda for non-agenda items for public discussion. So the first person I have is Ms. Deborah Payne.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Payne. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. This is the verdict. Light has come into the dark, but people love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. The light is far gone, the day is at hand. So then let us cast off the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. They grope in the dark without light, and he maketh them to stagger like a drunken man. But the path of the just is as the shining light, that life shineth more and more unto the perfect day. The way of the wicked is as darkness, they know not at what they stumble. The people who walk in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them has light shined. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not become partners with them. For at one time you were darkness, but you are not light. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true, and try to discern who is pleasing. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them, for it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible, for anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, "Awake, O sleeper."
Mr. Darren Stridiron.
I'm speaking tonight as a parent. I never give up my right as a parent to speak. After seeing the treatment that my son endured on just 3.5 days of bus trips, we requested that the school district provide the videos of the year of trips so we could see for ourselves what else he has suffered through. The district clerk recently responded to our request by informing us that the district lacked the resources to provide the videos in the appropriate format. We would have to pay a fee per video, and when asked what that fee would be, there was no response. Do you lack the resources to provide a contract extensions for the highest paid leaders of the district? No. Do you have a lack of resources to provide a 5-year contract extension to the same bus company involved in the cover-up of a maltreatment of my son? Of course not. Did you have a lack of resources when the Padilla 6 voted to pay the former superintendent $750,000 while his victims were forced to resign without any compensation? Clearly not. Do you have a lack of resources when the agenda has been revised on 1 day's notice for a massive pay raise for the superintendent? Obviously, there is plenty for those at the top. This district's leadership continues to play games while denying in writing that no maltreatment ever happened to my son. My son's treatment on the bus impacted him so much, and he knows what was being said to him at all times. What has the board done since this report was brought to your attention? There was another young boy in the van sitting 3 feet from my son. Do you realize that you, the school board, by doing nothing, have permitted these individuals to interact daily with a minor child who is a witness to the maltreatment of my son? The superintendent could have simply contacted the bus company and informed them that these 2 individuals were not to drive any Newburgh children. She has not done that. Whatever investigations the superintendent finally produces, it was not started until months after being informed about the problem. The board can now do what the superintendent did not do. Immediately tell the bus company that the driver and the aide that maltreated my son cannot drive Newburgh students at all. Instruct the superintendent to hand over the missing 17 minutes on one video and 5 minutes on the other video. The missing video is not caused by the van being turned off. Instruct the superintendent to provide all the videos at no cost to us in the appropriate format to us so that we can see what happened to our child. Instruct the superintendent to provide you with a written investigation report and ask why it took so long for her to respond to the maltreatment of a child. Find out the timeline of events, the personnel involved in the viewing of the videos, and what actions or inactions were taken by these employees. Find out why the physical, mental, and emotional maltreatment of a 7-year-old, nonverbal, autistic boy was considered nothing wrong by our transportation director. Would anyone consider it appropriate conduct for a bus aide to stare at my son for long periods of time while they lick their wide open lips in a circular pattern over and over? Would anyone consider it appropriate to tell my son after he coughs that they would break his face? The aide definitely said it. Instruct the board attorney to explain to you in writing how denying my wife the federally mandated 65 cents per mile rate for transporting a special education student to an out-of-district placement is the correct legal strategy to take. The school district has chosen to side with those who did wrong, Just like they did with the former superintendent, nothing has changed and no lessons have been learned. Based on the information provided to me by the district, the aide was not certified to be on the bus with my child. The aide was only trained and received certification 1 month after we reported our concerns to the bus company and the school district. The school district has a history of hired uncertified staff and now uncertified bus personnel. This is the same bus company that has had multiple issues just recently. Tonight, the superintendent is recommending that you get another contract to drive our children in the summer program. Your priorities are obviously in the wrong place. Our kids' safety needs to come first. The district leadership has failed to protect my son and provide the public with any confidence that he will protect our children. The parents of Newburgh see that if the son of a board member can be treated like this, their children can also be treated in the same manner or worse. I am asking that the Board of Education that used these last 2 meetings before the new majority takes over in July to be the leaders you were elected to be. Do the right thing, stand up for the current leadership, and demand excellence for all our children. Demand answers and actions.
Mr. Howard, do you have a question?
Yes, Madam President. These allegations are very egregious and they're very serious. So I would like to put a motion on the floor to suspend our rules of not responding and that we be allowed to ask certain questions, i.e., is there an investigation? Has an investigation been done? And what are the results of the investigation?
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Call.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mrs. Straight-Iron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
So, Mr. Howard, you would like me to respond to Mr. Stradine's comment?
If we have answers, yes.
Okay. So an investigation was conducted by 2 employees. And in addition, an analysis of the video was completed, both of which found that the allegations that Mr. Stradine said were to be untrue. The district was unable to confirm the allegations that you spoke about at the public comment section for the 3 previous meetings. The district is aware that you requested an additional investigation by law enforcement, and that their investigators showed no criminal charges. So that's the response that I have. This is not a give and take, Mr. Stradine, I'm sorry.
So you open this up so you could make that pre-prepared statement, and you don't let me respond to that?
I don't know, what's the legal, is there a give and take?
When did you start the investigation?
Hang on a second.
Suspended the board member's response.
Okay.
The board president has responded.
Okay, so that's the answer. The board president has responded.
2 more meetings left.
Thank you. Mr. Philip Howard.
Good evening, all. Coming before you this evening to address a few issues that were brought to my attention after the last board meeting, which I was unable to attend because I had a family emergency. I saw one of my colleagues, fellow board members, addressing the superintendent very disrespectfully and also making some very strong allegations and accusations in regards to our transportation department and individuals who are in employment of the district. As a board member, we have access to the superintendent to be able to address such egregious accusations and charges. My question is, was this opportunity taken by my colleague? Or was this just another opportunity to try to embarrass the district publicly again? If, in fact, these allegations and charges have validity, they need to be dealt with immediately, if not sooner. Grandstanding is not a way to resolve problems. It only causes confusion in our community and allows for the opportunity for people in the community to come up with their own version of what really has happened. And this can get out of control. Over the last 7 days, I have heard so many variations as to what was said at this last meeting that I am requesting this body that we be made aware of the results of the investigation. And since the allegations were made publicly, are the findings to be made publicly. That has just been addressed. So I know that by now, everyone is aware of the shooting incident that happened on the night of the senior prom at an after party in the vicinity of Fowler Avenue in the city of Newburgh. This was an unfortunate incident, and hopefully the news that no one was killed is a blessing. But my concern is that one of our newly elected board members had the audacity to like and share a video from the Facebook page of Daniel Baez, where Baez states that this is the world that we send so many of these kids into, undereducated and unprepared, and for us to keep lying to yourself about the great job we're doing. Let me say this. The teachers assistants, support staff, security, administrators, central office, superintendent, and board members do an incredible job with our scholars. We have some issues that need to be addressed going forward, but to like and share this despicable video and a problem is a real problem for me, as it should be to everyone who comes to work every day to help educate and prepare our scholars for real life. Why would a newly elected board member talk about our scholars in such a negative way? The shooting incident had nothing to do with the prom, but when you read the narrative of Baez, which was liked and shared by someone who purports themselves to be a supporter of our scholars, I'm immensely confused. With gun violence and gun issues going on in this country today, we should be finding solutions, not taking opportunities like this to try to politicize our scholars. Our scholars are far from perfect, just as we are, but they need people who want to help them, not demoralize them. You should be ashamed of yourself. All you have done is put yourself under a microscope, because the people in this community will be taking notice of your actions and your attitudes when it comes to how you govern yourself as a newly elected board member, when it comes to how you deal with our scholars. With regards to the people who came to the meeting last week, threatening board members by telling them that if they vote a certain way in regards to resolutions on our agenda, they will be voted out of office during the next period of elections. I was not aware that this is a bully pulpit where you can dictate members how they should vote. For the record, to all who think I can be intimidated and told how to vote, please have a seat. I have and will always vote my conscience, which is bound by the 11,500 scholars in this district and what is right for them. One thing that I've learned in my 11 years on this board is that when you put scholars first, everything else falls into place. When you put scholars first, that allows for our teachers to be better able to do their job and for all other support staff to do as good as well. So to those making those threats, I say to you, my life you may take, my integrity never. Thank you and have a good evening.
Councilman Omar Shakur. Okay. Gabrielle Hill. Ebony Anderson.
Good evening. I'm Ebony Anderson. I was holding a place for Ricky Peterson, who was in surgery, but she's here.
Actually, Ricky Peterson, Jacob. Good evening, everyone. I want to start by congratulating the incumbent newly elected board members to the school board and to the members of the board that are continuing on. I pray in your new role that you enter with an open mind, rolled up sleeves, to be able to do the work of the district, do the best you can for the children and the families of this community. Collaboration is key. We as a community are recovering from a very tumultuous few years. My hope is that you always keep in mind who you are serving, what you signed up for. This community leadership role you have been nominated into is 100% about our kids, doing what needs to be done to make better schools for our children, a better educational experience for our kids. This role is not about a political agenda or personal crusade, a right or wrong and finger pointing. Clean the slate and get back to advocating for the children. The loudest voice heard may not always be the factual voice and most certainly not the unifying one. Newburgh School District desperately needs unification, common ground, and support. Every board member has a responsibility to its community to keep the children and the community forefront when making tough decisions and following the guidelines presented to them to do such. I also want to extend my gratitude and many thanks to the people that work hard daily for our children. There is not enough gratitude shown to the district staff who work with the kids daily. The teacher aides, the teachers, the lunch ladies, the janitors, the security officers, the principals, and executive directors, everyone that puts a hand into the daily work. The accountability at the highest level came into question, and there were people who stood firm in their roles, stayed, and stepped into new positions that were plagued with scrutiny. These employees stabilized the foundation by undoubtedly working many late nights and long weekends away from their families and sacrificing personal time to keep our district intact and the children's well-being in forefront. Through diverse times, they handle the background work that many of us don't consider. As a child growing up in this district and as a parent who had kids that graduate from NFA, you don't consider the intricacies of creating a successful day in a district such as ours. Take a minute to weigh the responsibility, the grandiosity of it all. I am thankful for each person who has a hand in putting it all together. Lastly, all eyes are on Newburgh, the underdog of this county. It seems that everybody outside this district is against us. I guess the big question is, when are we going to stop being against us, each other? I implore the new members of the school board to stand on common ground and find some semblance of unity for upward progression of this district. Seek the route that results in best outcomes for our kids. This seat you hold is not about I, she, he, them, or a side to languish on. It should ultimately become about us, a community, a district wanting the best for our kids. We as a community need to start supporting us, united and Newburgh strong.
Sade Burks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to speak about the new contracts that are being discussed for the bus company. I'm not sure why we're discussing new contracts with the bus company when multiple of our scholars feel unsafe on the bus. I myself had an issue with the transportation of the bus company with my son. And I emailed the district and nothing was done about it. In this incident, the bus aide thought it was okay to take food from my son and take money from my son. I asked the bus aide why he would do that, because it was inappropriate. He said because he offered it to me. So I let him know that I would be reporting it. I reported it. I wrote emails to the district. I wrote emails to the bus company. Nothing was done. All that was done was the bus company continued to insult me as if I really needed the $2. So she told me she would send me the $2 in the mail, which she did, and she removed the bus aid from my son's bus. Okay, so my son is safe now, but what about the other kids? Because if he felt that safe taking money from a 7-year-old, what about the kids that are younger than 7 that are on that bus? We pay our school taxes for our kids to be transported to and from school safely. Not only that, my son is a special education student with an IEP. He is supposed to be on a safe bus with the safe aid. What is our special education department doing? And we're talking about renewing contracts and extending contracts and giving more money? What are you doing for our children? When I come to the meetings and I speak on these issues, then I'm giving calls into offices to have private meetings and then just encourage, oh, if you have an issue, just come to me. But I've come to you, I wrote emails. Why am I not addressed until I come to the board? There's another issue with the parent. Parents email us. I am the vice president of the Newburgh Parent Alliance. People know who I am. So when things are happening, parents are emailing me and sending me stuff, like the young lady, Lindsay Nozak, that came up here and spoke on behalf of her son. Now, I'm speaking on behalf of my sister, whose son go to Heritage Junior High, who has been physically assaulted on the bus multiple times. She's reported it, and nothing has been done. Not only has nothing been done, the vice principal waited a whole week later to get to her, scheduled her a meeting for 7:30 in the morning, did not show up for the meeting till 8 o'clock in the morning. How inconsiderate. Not only did she not address the issues that my sister was having, but her nonverbal tones was very disrespectful and rude. Again, we need to do better in protecting our children. We're talking about raises. I don't care about raises. You guys all up there do a wonderful job. You guys deserve your pay. But let's talk about keeping these kids safe as we are sending them off to school. I'm a single mother. At that time, when the issue happened with my son, I didn't have a bus. I didn't have a car. I bought myself a car for my birthday. So for that time being, I had to send my son on the same bus the next day with the same aide who felt it was comfortable enough to take money from him. Where's the safety for our children at? Do better, Newburgh. Thank you.
Lindsay Nozak, I think she spoke before, so she was on the other list. Okay. Ray Harvey? He's gone. Would anybody else like to address the board on non-agenda items? Thank you. Who does? Oh, Mr. Levenstein.
Thank you, Madam President. So, I had the privilege of attending a law school graduation last week, and the common theme from the three distinguished speakers was about justice. All three speakers said you cannot have justice without truth. 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 It's time to speak and hear the truth. We have a board member who has sued the district for $45 million with a still ongoing lawsuit. What programs or personnel would be eliminated with a lawsuit like this? We have a board member who has brought legal action against students of our district. Yes, legal action against students for that board member's personal benefit. We have heard speakers and people who post on social media who willingly and gladly lie or mislead. We have board members whose only aim is to berate and destroy the district, not to help the students of the district. We have a board member who divulges executive session discussions. As the new board members can inquire about when they are seated, if they wish, is that a board member's public comments create the necessity for a settlement given to the former superintendent. We have board members who protect the worst of the worst. We have board members who disparage the good people that work hard to help the students of our district. A lot of these good people have left the district over the years or will leave rather than deal with the bad behavior of this board. There is much more that I could say if I ignored my responsibility of confidentiality of executive session discussions. I bring these truths forward publicly to protect my reputation and the reputation of our hardworking, honest, caring employees from being continually besmirched. The last election literally included a target on me by those who believe anything they hear without question and without knowing the facts. If you continue to believe what you hear without a question, you will continue to get a twisted view of this district and will continue to go down the path of destroying the district. I got involved in school board politics years ago when I felt there was bad board behavior. It never went away and continues in the lying, vindictive objective of a few. At some point, hopefully sooner than later, I wish that all who are misled will realize the truth. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting its shoes on. Mark Twain. Thank you.
Thank you. It's going to be a long night. Be it resolved that there are no other comments on non-agenda items. Please come quickly.
Okay. Hi. I'm Tracy Wallace. I'm a parent of 4 kids that are in the district. I'm speaking on behalf, I have 2 children with autism. One is graduating, Kaylee. She did very well in NFA. She did very well with resources. I never had any issues in IEP meeting until recently. I often tell my children to advocate for themselves. My son, Luke, is in GAMS, and he recently had an IEP meeting. And at the IEP meeting, I expressed my concerns, which was that Luke was not keeping on tasks. For some reason this year, he was not keeping, he had to be constant reminders and constant of focusing on the task at hand. They said thank you, they moved on. The psychologist went in the IEP meeting, she said the same thing. Everyone said the same thing. And then at the end of the meeting, the recommendations was to take him out of a small classroom and put him in a larger classroom, from which they explained it was restricted, and because of academically, he can be in an ICT classroom. I disagreed, but moving on. Then they said they were taking away his transportation. I was shocked because I said he does not have red flags. He will walk home with anyone, although he's very smart. He needs transportation. I was yelled at the meeting. I was told that I should go seek medical attention for medical advice. I said, I have a daughter who has autism. She's on medication. I have experience in this. He does not need medication. He just needs special transportation to get to and from safely. I was yelled at and said, the chairperson over the phone said, that is our final decision. You are not getting transportation, and that is our recommendation. And that was it. I was very upset. Then, I don't know how much time I have. I didn't want to speak about this, but a few weeks later, my son was assaulted on the bus multiple times. It was an IEP bus with a monitor and cameras. He was sexually assaulted twice, forced. And immediately, when I told the principal, they immediately suspended the children and expelled the children from the school. As soon as Mr. Kawaki found out, I told him about transportation, and he said, they should have listened to you. Your son needs special transportation. Why did my son have to have an incident for him to get special services? Oftentimes, other parents approach me and say that they have to pay advocates for their IEP meetings as well. That special education, they're not getting services. I don't understand why, with all the resources that the city of Newburgh has for special education, why people are getting extended contracts when there are numerous children that have advocates, needing for advocates in IEP meetings, fighting for services. It's unfortunate that this happened to my son, that he could not speak up for himself. He could not shout, he fought, and yet the monitor and nobody helped him. And I don't want to see something like this happen to someone else. George M. Carroll is definitely responsible. I find the school district responsible. I found out that another person was assaulted the same exact way 4 years ago. I was told that George M. Carroll, and everyone is aware of this incident that's on the board. I don't know how true that is. If there are multiple incidents that are happening to children on IEP boards, of children, our most vulnerable children, our disabled children, our exceptional learner children that cannot speak up for themselves, that need a voice, I don't understand how children are not being heard. They're needing advocates, and and these incidences are occurring on these buses. I think we need to do better. I think that we need to reevaluate George M. Carroll. I think we need to evaluate the monitors that are on the bus that should be trained with special needs children. And I think that we need to listen to our children more. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now at we have somebody else that would like to speak, please.
My name is Scott Rausenberger. I'm a town of Newburgh resident. Graduated from NFA, class of '98. There was just a comment made in Mr. Levinson's speech there about truth, and he mentioned a $45 million lawsuit that's currently out against the school district by one of our board members. I'm asking the board as a whole, is that not a direct conflict of interest? How can you sit on the board and have a multi-million-dollar lawsuit out against the entity that you're supposed to be representing? I'm just asking that as a concerned member of the community. We're talking about pay raises and everything else. As far as I'm concerned, I've always felt this way. People's salaries are a personal thing, and I understand that the public school system is a different situation where it's a very public thing, but I don't think that we as the community should necessarily get a vote on what the teachers are paid, the administration is paid, and the faculty and staff is paid, as there are things that happen that there are things that happen that we know nothing about. There are hours that are worked that we know nothing about. So I'll leave that question on the table about, is there a conflict of interest if you have litigation in the court system out against the Board of Education? How can you be on both sides of the fence? I don't know if there's an answer to that. Thanks.
Anybody else want to address the board on non-agenda items? Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: matter made confidential under FERPA, employment history of particular individuals, matters leading to the employment of particular individuals, litigation in the matter of Bond versus NECSD index number 21CV05623, and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion. Roll call.
Mr. Lamar? Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Mineo? Yes. Mr. Straight-Iron? Yes. Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay? Yes. Ms. Green? Yes. Mr. Howard?
We'll be back shortly, I hope.
Good evening, members of the 2022-2023 Board of Education, soon to be members of the 2023-2024 Board of Education and Greater Newburgh community. This evening, I will be addressing some of the comments that I've heard at prior board meetings and some that have been shared with me from social media posts that do not reflect the accurate portrayal of my leadership team. Perhaps you are unaware of the shortage of competent and caring school and district leaders across the state and the country. As your new superintendent, I've had the pleasure of getting to know this amazing leadership team. The fact that the district has such a competent and committed team is a rarity in the current educational arena. Throughout the year, I have observed and learned of the unique talent each member of this team brings. I have made some shifts in responsibilities assigned to each member based on their capacity, and am confident that my team will continue to lead this district forward. As a counterpoint to the rhetoric shared on social media, please allow me to share some facts with you. Our team has been committed to the field of education for a collective total of 310 years. Our team is very well educated and collectively has earned 27 college-level degrees ranging from bachelor's to doctorates. Members of our team have received comprehensive training, certificates in a variety of school and district turnaround strategies. As your superintendent, it is critical that I have a team that is well educated, current on educational shifts, representative of the demographic makeup of our students, and has the heart to lead and love our students, families, and community. I ask that you simply afford me the opportunity to do my job as an experienced educational leader and allow me to cultivate my team in the best interest of our student population. It has been brought to my attention that the community is unaware of my accomplishments and those of my team throughout this year. Please allow me the opportunity to share just a few. Deputy Superintendent provided me with transitional leadership support to ensure a seamless transition and an opportunity to accelerate improvement efforts. Assembled a 72-person strategic planning team representative of student demographics of our district. The team includes stakeholders from all bargaining units, as well as members from our community. The new strategic plan will be presented to the Board of Education at the July 6, 2023 reorganization meeting. We've collaborated with Ms. Mary Lou Garland to secure a new site for the Town of Newburgh branch of the Newburgh Free Library at the Newburgh Mall. Initiated the beginning phase of a 3-year in-depth analysis of Board of Education policies in consultation with New York State School Board Association. Complied with the New York State Accountability 1-year restart model, and we have initiated preparations for the 2023-24 model. Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education. Initiated a new K-8 math textbook and resource pilot initiative. This pilot includes 38 teachers across 11 schools. Implemented the American Reading Company core reading program in all schools. This multi-year effort has now provided a consistent reading program in all schools and classrooms in kindergarten through grade 5. Piloted computer-based testing of our grade 3 through 8 ELA and math assessments. This was done to better prepare our students and faculty for full implementation. Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education. Instrumental in developing a non-traditional program for students at the high school who were overage and undercredited. Some of these students had not earned any credit and were in jeopardy of dropping out. Successfully transitioned new leaders at Newburgh Free Academy main campus, South Middle School, Temple Hill Academy K-8, and a new athletic director. All done with the students in the forefront and minimal interruption to instruction. Coordination of a middle-level master schedule framework that will be implemented at South Middle School and Heritage Middle School. Assistant Superintendent for Data and Technology, Chief Information Officer. Implemented an academic programming system that affords high school students an opportunity to map out their 4-year program as freshmen. Wow. Secured and implemented the Learning Technology Grant that allowed for curriculum development and alignment to NYSED, New York State Education Department, digital learning standards. Requested to share her amazing knowledge of implementing a student management system to school and district leaders across the state. Assistant Superintendent for Exceptional Learners. Designed and implemented new programs for students with autism and medically fragile students at the elementary level for 23-24. In full compliance with the annual state performance indicator, Indicator 11, that requires the district to conduct a transition meeting from early intervention services to preschool services on or before their 3rd birthday. We are in 100% compliance. Thank you, Mr. Bayer. Developed and implemented a school-to-work internship program for NYSAA students in their last year of high school eligibility at Crystal Run Healthcare that will lead to competitive employment and benefits for these students after exiting. Thank you. Assistant Superintendent for Equity and Access. You saw much of her work tonight with the students. As well as New York State Minorities in Criminal Justice Symposium. 15 students from NFA North, Maine, and West attended this event for the first time, resulting in a continued annual opportunity to cultivate a high school minorities in criminal justice symposium. How about equity and access? Middle School Upstander Institute. 30 students from South Middle School, Temple, Meadow, and Heritage attend this workshop to on how to be an upstander and identifying microaggressions. Assistant Superintendent for Finance. Kimberly, thank you so much. Could not have done this without you, particularly this year. Although I didn't have the pleasure of hiring you, it's so nice to have someone with a focus on students as we stood and balanced this budget as a team, and we seamlessly presented it to this community. Thank you. Created standard operating procedure manuals for each functional area within the finance department. Created training manuals for end users in purchasing and accounts payable to work as reference tools for staff in buildings and departments. Rebuild of position control to provide more specificity in position titles and fully utilize the system to track positions and vacancies. All the behind-the-scenes work. Moves from more than 700 individual contracts to 5 school year contracts. Wow. Capital project is back on track. Identified new partners to support the district through design and construction. Really appreciate you. Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources and Executive Director for Human Resources. Revised our approach to leadership mentoring to include several levels of support to participants. Mentoring framework, periodic electronic newsletter, large group meetings to check the pulse of all participants, access to online portal containing a robust library of mentoring resources. Rethinking CSC supports, which means there's an ongoing collaboration with unit leaders to assess and expand on the professional learning opportunities currently available to our support staff across our district. What an investment. CSCA Mentoring Pilot. Launch of the first ever mentoring program in the district to support novice unit members in getting acclimated to their job, responsibilities, accessing resources, and developing soft skills that enhance their work performance. As well as facilitated 4 EAP sessions for our central office personnel with topics such as managing stress during challenging times, emotional intelligence in the workplace, balancing work and life, building effective teams tomorrow. In addition, the Managing Stress During Challenging Times session was also provided to our supervisors, mentors, and mentees during their mid-year large group meeting with Human Resources. There have been innovations in diversity recruitment. We've generated new partnerships with the University of Buffalo and SUNY New Paltz for the creation of 2 Grow Our Own Teachers pathways. One for TAs interested in becoming teachers at the secondary level, one for current secondary level teachers interested in becoming bilingual teachers. Because what I heard from this board during my interview, we need to make sure that we have our folks come back to be in the district to help to move our community forward. This is what we started to do. CSCA Employment Information Fair was held here to orient community to vacant support positions and a process of applying. This evening, you will see resolutions to extend contracts for members of my team. 2 of their current contracts state that they shall be entitled to at least 1 year notice in writing in the event that the board intends not to renew this contract. Therefore, it is our duty to review this contract now, and it is my recommendation to extend their contracts. The third contract does not currently address annual increases. However, other contracts for similar positions have language that leads me to add the annual salary increases so that the person is treated equitably in comparison to her colleagues. Although their reputation and dedication to this district, along with my recommendation, should be sufficient, allow me to elaborate even more. Mr. McLemore, born and raised in this community, 1970, graduate of NFA, always a Goldback. Mike has deep-seated roots in the community and is well regarded and respected within our community and across the greater community. Please be aware that we are required to provide an employment decision 1 year prior to the end of his contract. It is without hesitation that I recommend the continuation of his employment. Mr. Bayer. Although not born or raised in Newburgh, his heart is always with us. He is one of the most intelligent special education leaders in New York State. As with Mr. McLemore, we are also required to provide an employment decision 1 year prior of his contract. It is without hesitation that I recommend the continuation of his employment. Ms. Roaring. When recruiting Kimberly, it was one of her priorities to return to her family that lives in the Hudson Valley. Although she has had a successful career in Albany, her heart was already here. The school business official position is one of the greatest shortage areas across the country. Her expertise and no-nonsense approach has already transformed her division. However, during the original contract development in 2022, her contract did not address the annual salary increase that was afforded all other executive team members. This amendment simply corrects that error. With regard to my contract, in compliance with my current employment contract, yesterday, my contract addendum was added to the agenda for the Board of Education meeting tonight after legal negotiations between my attorney and NECSD District Council. The addendum is there for BOE consideration. I am simply complying with the language in my contract that will bring me closer to the equitable and comparable compensation my position requires. This contract will also begin to close the salary gap between the leadership of NECSD and other school districts in the Hudson Valley. On the slides, you will see a visual display of that gap. The columns represent the number of students enrolled in 5 Orange County school districts. The blue link represents the salary points of superintendents in those districts. NECSD is represented on the left. The second looks very similar. The column represents the size of the budget that is managed, and again, the blue link represents the salary point of superintendents in those districts. NECSD is represented on the left. Thank you. Just want to make an announcement while we have a captive audience. All of our activities will be held indoors tomorrow due to the smoke. Thank you. Outside. We promise we will not make this a long night. Mr. Kevin Rothman will be presenting item 4.2, an update on ARP and Sarissa grants.
Thank you, Superintendent Manning Campbell. Good evening, Madam President, Board of Ed members, and Cabinet members. My name is Kevin Rothman. I'm the Director of Grants for the Newburgh Enlarged City School District, and I am also a proud alumni of the district and have been serving in the district for 19 years. And I'm proud that I get to continue to learn and serve within the district with such dedicated professionals. I'm here to give an update on federal funding allocation and spending in response to the pandemic. So the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, you can see the allocation there as well as the time frame for this, otherwise known as Sarissa, as well as state education guidance for that allocation. These are some of the positions that have been funded through Sarissa, and because this funding is ending, the time frame for this funding is ending in September, you can also see the plan for continuing some of these personnel and the positions that have been funded previously through Sarissa going forward, including through ARP, which I'll speak about in a minute, as well as transferring some of them to the general fund. Here you can see some of the contract services, such as cybersecurity, as well as equipment and building needs that have been met through Sarissa. This is a breakdown of the categories, the expenses to date, as well as the final planned expenditures for each one of the categories within Sarissa. As you can see, all expenditures are planned for and or approved to ensure that we are maximizing this funding. Next is the American Rescue Plan. Again, you can see the amount of that funding as well as the time frame through September 2024, as well as the state education guidance around that funding. And here, through the American Rescue Plan, you can see the positions that are being funded through ARP. Currently, the plan is for 79 positions next school year to be funded through ARP. And this gives a breakdown of a position that was moved from Sarissa, as well as some of the positions at our Midtown campus that are being funded through ARP. On this slide, you can see the technology needs and the contractual expenditures that have taken place through ARP or are planned through ARP. And here is a category breakdown of expenses to date, as well as the planned expenses for ARP. The last funding allocation I will be speaking about is the ARP reserves. So that's the American Rescue Plan broken into 3 categories. The summer enrichment, lost instruction, as well as after-school programming, and the amount allocated for each one of those, as well as the state guidance around that funding. So the funds are being used or planned to be used to support things around extended day programming, as well as extended school year. And so when I first started this position, we were involved in a New York State required Education Stabilization Fund coordinated monitoring. This was not an audit, but it was for New York State, and it was in preparation for a possible federal audit when the funding is done. And the purpose was to look at what we had planned, our spending, right? So our plan had to be submitted, it had to be approved. So they were looking at what we had planned, what our current expenditures were to date, as well as our future plans, right? And so through that, that monitoring, NYSED approved the district's submission of the coordinated monitoring review, indicating that all indicators have been met as of April 28th, 2023. Thanks.
Board members, any questions or comments on this presentation? Yes, Mr. Stradone.
On the ARP money, you had a column that said benefits $4.2 million. What benefits are being covered for ARP money?
All employee benefits associated with the salary expenses in ARP are being picked up there. So that would be payroll taxes, retirement contributions, as well as health insurance.
Are benefits counted towards an acceptable expense under ARP funding?
Yes, they are, as we passed our review.
In the ARP reserves, you had a transportation expense. If you're spending ARP reserves on transportation, would that money not be reimbursed, or is that type of transportation not normally reimbursed?
This is transportation above and beyond that would not generally be reimbursed for the programming that we're doing.
So you're saying that transportation for after-school programming is not normally reimbursed at the 80 to 90% rate?
Generally, no, those are disallowed miles. It's to and from school.
Thank you.
Mr. Howard?
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Rothman, so the programs that are funded through grants and the positions that are accompanying those positions, are we building in any capacity in our district if those grants were to cease or we no longer have access to that money? That's not a good question.
So I'm going to partially answer that question for Mr. Rothman, having been embedded in the work a little bit longer. We have been looking very closely at what we're doing here. You'll notice that many of these expenditures are one-time expenditures. It's additional time when we're looking at summer school and after-school programming, so we're not embedding. Yes, we do have 79 positions planned in ARP next year, and as we shared in budget development, we're looking at how attrition and other methods can allow us to absorb some of those positions going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Roaring. I wasn't putting you on the spot, Kevin. I apologize.
Mr. Stridiron?
What's the dollar amount for those 79 positions that's covered by the ARP funds?
I would refer back to slide 9. That also includes substitute expenditures planned for next year.
So is the plan for the 24-25 budget, which is going to happen in the spring, to cover those 79 positions with general fund? Okay, yeah. I see it's $10 million. So that $10 million expense for 23-24 in the 24-25 budget that's going to be developed in February and March, where is that $10 million going to come from?
So as I indicated, some of this is substitute expense, which would not be planned to be absorbed in the general fund. And as we've continued to note, as we built the budget for 23-24, we will not be able to absorb all 79 positions. That's why we're looking at attrition and other vacancies that arise to see where we can absorb, and we're prioritizing the positions that we need to move our educational program forward.
Do you have a estimated proposed budget for next year that estimates how many layoffs right now? Do you have any documentation for any plan for next year for budget?
We did share in budget development what the projected gap would be next year, maintaining the general fund.
And how much would that be?
We would have to go back and look at that presentation that I shared with the board.
So there's no documentation that's provided to anybody at this point that has a projection for next year?
Ms. Peterson?
We can share with the board the presentation that was previously presented to the community that talked about the budget gap and what the projections would be. So we'll definitely put that back out.
There's no internal documents that the board hasn't seen yet that would see whether or not what the budget is for next year?
What'd you say? I'm not sure where we're going. Yeah, we've already answered that.
No, his question was something different. Could you repeat your question, please?
Are there any internal documents that the board has not seen yet that would help us to determine what the outlook is for next year?
Mr. Lamar, did you have your hand up?
Question was answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rothman. Nice presentation.
Mr. Christopher Bayer will be presenting item 4.3, an exceptional learners update.
Thank you, Dr. Manning, Madam President, board members, and executive staff. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. By regulation and by policy, it is the obligation of the Exceptional Learner Division to report out and occasionally as to the progress in our division, at least annually. So that's what I'm doing here. I know I'm late, it's late, and I'm one of the last to go, but I'm going to do the best I can to make this a little bit exciting. So I just want to go back. The first slide will tell you, just to remind the board and remind the community, Jim, what special education is, because I think there's a lot of mythology around it and a lot of misunderstandings. I've said before, it is not a special or a separate thing. It is part of the entire general education experience that kids get, and we are part of that equation, right? So I put on the left, it's very long-winded, but it's a highly regulated, compliance-driven set of laws and regulations. We are driven by regulations. We are all about law. We are about compliance. That consumes a large part of what we do, right? We're a range of programs and services. But it's very clear, as you'll see, to enable students to access general education, right? And we are there to level the playing field. We're not there to provide unfair advantages. You all know about how this works in your public lives, right? You go into an elevator and there's Braille. You go into a building and there's a ramp, or there's a button you push, or maybe a voice-activated experience where students who don't, or adults don't have access to those things get those. That's what it looks like. It's reducing any of those barriers, all right? So next set of slides. So go back, I think. I'm sorry, you're right. I'm wrong. Go back. I'm sorry, Jim. So what governs us? There's three primary areas. We have federal law, which is called the Individuals with Disability Act. We have the state regulations, which translates that federal law into practice in New York. And then there's case law. You're all aware of the fact that many judges make decisions that ultimately drive some of the work we do. IDA was reauthorized in 2004, and the next set of slides really explain what is important about what we do, right? So you've heard this before, least restrictive environment. It's a term we use a lot. It's very important. This is a tenet of IDEA. I refer to it as the preamble. You must provide access to general education for our students. We are not a separate but equal experience. We know what that looks like in American history, and it cannot be repeated on our disabled children. These are the language from the IDEA. It's to be close as possible to the student's home. It needs to be, to the maximum extent appropriate, we need to make sure that we provide services within general education. I'm going to say here that one of the words that's kind of crept into the vocabulary lately that has me very concerned is I've heard the word that students are misplaced. And I'm going to respectfully ask, as a community, we stop using that word. Because if I say to you that a child with disability is misplaced, and I replace the word disability with black, would you accept that? If I said that we've had recent immigrants moved into the district and they've been misplaced, would you accept that? If I told you there's a girl in an engineering class at the high school, well, she's misplaced because maybe she doesn't have the math proficiency, would you accept that? We had a girl on the football team, if I'm mistaken. If someone doesn't understand the law around Title IX, would we accept the fact that he would turn to her, she would turn to her and say, honey, we have female sports for you. What are you doing here? You don't belong on the football field. I'm getting emotional because this is a near and dear. I've been doing this 33 years. It is absolutely imperative we understand that our students have a right, and the notion of misplaced needs to be removed from our vocabulary. We recognize that students with disabilities have challenges, and sometimes those challenges play out in our public schools, and it's our responsibility to meet their needs. They also have amazing gifts, and those gifts need to be celebrated. And anyone who's worked with students with disabilities understand when they're next to your kids and our community, we all benefit from them being there. So this is near and dear to my heart. This is my 33 years of work, and this is a very essential part of what I believe in and what the law requires. Please go to the next slide. We provide what's called an individual education program, right? We have to write an individual program. In that, it also says that you cannot remove kids unnecessarily from public education. That you need to make sure that you understand the harmful effects of removing special education to programs outside of the general ed setting. Please move on. This is a big one that changed in 2004. We must have high quality programs and services. You need to have high expectations. There was too many generations where students with disabilities did not have the same access nor were held to the same standard. When we learned about special education students, they can meet that standard. They just need help, and they need support, and they need our guidance throughout their years in our schools. Please move on. These are the 4 areas that we've been working on. I'm going to run through this because I know we're short of time, but there's 4 areas that either have recurred, but they're more specific this year. The second bullet is more Mr. Regan than me, and I'm not going to talk about today, but we've done wonderful work around SEL and restorative practices. We'll have that conversation another day. But we are always about compliance. You'll hear me say that. Continuum as well as the graduation and assessment. We take that very seriously. We recognize we have work to do there, and it's always an area of focus for us. Please move on. So one of the things that guides special education is something called a Special Education Performance Indicator. Every year, every district in New York State has to report out, and Dr. Manning mentioned one that we had this year. This is highly technical. We don't have enough time. It's really late. But these are the areas that I must report out to the state, whether we've met compliance in areas that are regulatory in nature. You can see it's around transition services, preschool. There's parent surveys that go out. We must meet on every kid within 60 days of when parents sign for consent for evaluation. And we're measured on this. We're scrutinized by this by New York State. So where are we with the compliance in this district? Please, next slide. So you can see when I came on in 2015-16, and I used that as my benchmark because that was what I was tasked to do when I came to the district, is to really work on compliance. We were not compliant the first year. One of the things we learned was this was an area that was in disarray. Making sure we meet on kids within 60 days, we were not compliant. We were required to then redo the survey because the previous administration did not send out this requisite number of surveys. So we had to reset them out, so we had 2 that year, and we actually met compliance that year. As you see there's transition from preschool to school age. You have to meet every preschool child that comes out of EI by their 3rd birthday. We were 1 short, but in the world of regulation, you don't get credit for trying. So we were not compliant. Then you see transition. Please move on because I know we're short of time. And as we moved on and as we started to really tighten our protocols, you can see how things shifted. The 18, 19, 19, 20 were not compliance driven when we didn't have to do in the parent survey. So when I hear that parents are not happy with special education, I get it, right? 95% is laudable, but that means there's 100 parents who are not happy with us. I've heard that, we have advocates now. Every district have advocates. I see advocates as partners, not adversaries. And if you know me, I'm happy to sit down with anybody because special ed's complex and families need help, and it's very complicated. And if an advocate's going to come in, I'm willing to work with them, as is our team. So you can see again, last year we were compliant for timely evaluations, and this year we actually got 100% for that 3rd birthday compliance. So as you see, as I've been here and as we've transitioned, there has been, and I used it, the green and the red, I'm sorry, but it is very clear to understand there's been a shift towards increasing and ongoing compliance. I think it's very easy to understand that. And we have these other areas. So I was brought in, Newburgh was historically in an area of disrepair when it comes to compliance. And I want to be clear on this. When I talk about this, I'm not talking about our teachers. I'm not talking about our teacher aides, our support staff. We have amazing people here, and they were here before I got here. This is about what we need to do in our division to make sure their work was congratulated and the fact that they were able to do what they had to do for kids, right? So I'm not in any way saying this was our division and our central office. So we had 23 areas. We fixed that within 18 months, and with all due respect, that was historic. I challenge you to find another district in your state that was able to pull this off. And I've always had the support of the board, and I've had the support of the superintendent and the deputy and everyone else. I didn't do this alone, but this was historic, just so you know. It's also been mentioned that we need to be audited. We have been audited 3 times by New York State. And look, we've been compliant. They have come into our buildings. They go into our CSE meetings. They have looked at our documents. They have talked to parents. This has been an open and transparent process, as by New York State. And we have been compliant in 3 audits over my time here. So bring another audit on. You're not going to find anything wrong. We're not perfect, but we're in these particular areas that matter, we have maintained compliance. Next slide. One area that we're not as good at is around suspensions. I've heard it said that we don't suspend enough here. It's important that the board and the community understand that we cannot just say things without understanding context. We are watched and scrutinized over our processes, and it is proven over 13 years we over-suspend students with disabilities. Suspension cannot be the only answer to what we do here. And in this year, we've found 2 areas around students overall, and always concerning, which is we brought very transparently to the Exceptional Learner Committee, we are over-suspending our black students with disabilities. And for the first time in our district in a generation, we're now at risk for over-suspending students with disabilities who are Hispanic. This is not a small problem and not a minor data point. Please move on. Whenever we are non-compliant, we have to do corrective action plans. And even though we are over-suspending students, special ed has a process once they're suspended, And we have been scrutinized on this about the process needs to occur, and we've been fully compliant when we've had these reviews by the state. So what happens after they're suspended, we're in good shape, but we need to grapple with the fact, the difficult, awkward conversation that while we understand safety and of our buildings matters, we cannot forego due process and the unintended consequences when we remove our children from our buildings for things that sometimes may be beyond their control. I want to mention, too, about that, the noncompliance. That is not including drugs, alcohol, violence, and weapons. So that's happening with all of those removed, because the state understands if a kid brings a gun to school, you can't go, the due process is different. This is simply just infractions by the Code of Conduct. We actually suspend black boys, black children with disabilities 7 times more than all other races combined. It's a difficult conversation, but you need to have it. Okay, next. So I mentioned it there that we made progress. You know, I put in there it's very important to see that we have to have prevention, something we worked very hard in our division, as well as have appropriate consequences, developmentally appropriate. A 5-year-old should not be treated like an 18-year-old when they commit an infraction in our schools. And we have to give our kids restorative relationships and learn from our mistakes. We cannot just mirror the penal code. We are not the Orange County Justice Department. Our kids are learners and they make mistakes, and we have to balance safety with their rights and their due process. And of course, state proficiency graduation rates are always going to be a point of emphasis. I'm going to run faster because I know I'm talking a lot, so let's move forward. We do have a continuum of special education. And this is something that's a point of emphasis. We've added new classrooms. We right-sized 7 years ago. Kids don't have to move buildings anymore when their IEP changes. That's been a point of emphasis for us. The next slide, which I'm not going to have time to get into with you, really just kind of lays out what the continuum looks like. We have an array of programs in every one of our buildings. Kids don't need to leave their building to get a certain service. And then we have on the right some very specialized programs in certain buildings. NYSA stands for New York State Ultimate Assessment. Those are most developmentally disabled kids. And then we have our career programs at the high school. I'm going to run through these quick. These are just information. You can see that our classification rate has trickled up. Sometimes I hear that special ed doesn't want to classify. Please look at the data. We follow the law. If a student is classifiable, we classify them. This also represents the fact that we have a lot of international kids who have moved in, who have already come with disabilities that we need to be able to provide support, and they often come without an IEP. Please, next slide. LRE, I mentioned this. This is a big point of emphasis. I've heard, well, you put too many kids in general education. They need more support. You're actually, as a board and as a community, measured and accounted for this. And when I got here, less than 40% of kids were in less restrictive, which is our integrated co-teaching classrooms. That was one of the lowest data points in New York State. This was a point of emphasis. I have not made that clear. We have moved up into the mid-50s. That means that half of our kids were their general ed peers, 80% more of their day. That's over 180 kids that we've moved, and we've done it responsibly. We're not just dumping kids into general ed settings. We are watched on this. We have not, as much as I'm proud of this, the threshold is 60%. We have never met that in this district, and we need to be aware of that. Graduation rate, again, an area of relative growth. But prior to getting here, we had a 38% graduation rate. You can see that it's gone up over time. This is a 4-year graduation rate by August. And you can see that we currently have got 60.2. It is not where we want to be. I get that. But we have tried very hard to be very intentional about our programming to try to increase that rate. You can see what COVID did in 1920. Our kids were especially hard hit by when schools closed. They didn't make it to the finish line. Next slide. Dropout rate, again, not proud of the number. It should be lower. But you can see more recently, as a result of some shifts we've made in our programming, we're starting to see a dropout rate. And actually, it's not any different than the total population. Generally, special ed has a higher dropout rate than your general population or your total population. And right now, as it currently stands, we're not doing as bad. But we never want any kid to drop out. We understand that. And then I'm not going to go into long conversations, but we did shift our summer program, and I want to go to the next slide. We provide summer services for students with special ed if they regress or there's concerns about regression. Traditionally, we provided special ed only for certain kids and only in one building. We were actually kind of not in keeping with the guidance from the state. Our kids don't often go to summer camps. Parents sometimes forgo their vacations because they understand the responsibility to have our kids attend summer school. It is a difference maker for them to have those 6 weeks. But we need to do it in keeping with the law, which is they need to be in buildings with general ed kids. They need to be sitting next to them in social circles. They need to have access to opportunities for camp, whatever that may look like in our, for example, Guinea Avenue. But it's clear in the law that we have to make sure our kids are with non-disabled peers in the summertime. That has not always been the case in Newburgh, and we changed that this year for the first time. The last one's important as well. You are not required to provide the same program in summer as you are during the school year because they understand the social importance of summer, and they want special ed to be included with general ed. So they give us a little flexibility in the summer to shift the program as long as we're making sure they don't regress. So that's my report. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Board members, does anybody have a question for Mr. Barrett? Yes, Mr. Lamar.
Thank you for that presentation, but I'm curious, is it unreasonable to think that the disproportionate number of students that are being suspended from the Exceptional Learners Program could be, that some of them at least, could be related to them being not in the place, or rather, not receiving the services, I'm going to listen to what you said, not receiving the services that would best serve them, therefore preventing them from or making it easier on them so they don't, whatever it is, act out or do whatever it is that's causing them to get the suspension.
I understand that to a point, but we need to talk about the fact, the elephant in the room, 7 times our black students are 7 times more likely to be disabled, our special ed students. So it's not just about the wrong placement. There's other concerns that I think we have to grapple with. If we're going to talk about equity, we need to understand it from that point of view. Yes, some kids, we learn that they need more than sometimes we can give them, but that's a process, and families are part of that process. And I can't just turn to a family and say, I'm sorry, I know your other 5 kids are going to Guinea Avenue, but your 6th kid needs to go to Southern Westchester. It's a hard process. Anyone who has a special education student or child, it is a long and arduous process. And families have to come to grips with both the good news and the bad news that sometimes occurs in trying to raise a child who has challenges. And we need to be respectful over the time to make sure that when they get there, that we get there with them and we don't bully them into something that may not be what they're ready to hear. Their parents are key stakeholders in this process. And as I reported out earlier, even if we make the decision that something is needed more, it's everywhere. We've been on listservs. There's no placements, out-of-district placements for kids. Every district in your state right now is challenged with this process. There just isn't simply enough spaces for kids who are presenting challenges to us in our public schools.
Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Madam President. Great presentation, Mr. Baer. But I have a question. It's a compound question. So it's in regards to the process used in determining whether students should be in district, out of district. And the compound part of that question is this. When that decision, that process is taking place, is it inclusive? Does it include the parents? Does it include the school district? Does it include medical professionals? And what are we doing as a district to make sure that the parents are an integral part of this decision process? And I would like to say we want to keep them in district, but can you tell me those challenges?
So certainly it's the idea that parents are key stakeholders. They have the right to have meaningful input. They're not just guests at the meeting. They are actually members. They are as important to the equation as anyone else at that table. So we need to make sure we maintain the dignity of that process for them and make sure we explain what happens along the way. Conversely, when we bring kids back, there's been some noise around when we bring kids back, we don't prepare them when they come back. That's simply not factual. Mr. Gerard was here to talk about that, but he had to go because we're running really late. But we brought 11 students back over the last 3 years. Of those 11 students, 9 have been successful. Some are on the honor roll, 2 are graduating this year. 1 student only had significant referrals, but he's actually doing well academically. He's actually got a 75 in one of our middle schools. So the idea that we bring kids back without a plan is not true. Mr. Gerard goes to these meetings as the out-of-district person. Kids beg, Mr. Gerard, can I come back to the district? What do I need to do? I go back to the dignity of our students and our families, and if a kid asks to come back, we make sure that they have to meet certain criteria. Then we bring the parents in, and we make sure they're involved. When we're considering bringing them back into a building, in our specialized programs, Bonneville, Meadow Hill, New Windsor, staff from those buildings go out to the sites and meet the kids to make sure that they're a fit. We don't just drop kids into buildings arbitrarily. Is there once in a while where there's exceptions? Especially during COVID? Absolutely. We're not perfect. And we also have kids who sometimes transfer in, and they're unknown to us, and we have to follow their IEP. I can't say you need a BOCES program if your IEP calls for an 812 or a 1211. So we invite the parents, and we make sure there's a very clear process. We actually track this. I have a whole database on all the efforts that were put into making sure kids are going out correctly or coming back correctly.
Can I follow up on that?
Yes, quickly, and then I'll call on Mr.
Okay, so
Stadion.
let's talk about the white elephant in the room, no pun intended. So we're talking about the disproportionality rate of suspension of exceptional learners of color. Talk to me about that. Why is that? And I know it's not something that's just here. It's almost a national problem. But why is that? And what are we doing as a district to ensure that we are not singling out exceptional learners of color? And how can we get that number down? Because for that number to be as high as it is, that's a problem to me.
You know, I think, I don't know if I'm prepared to answer all of why that is. I certainly know that we're a district that has made a focus in your board as equity. It's important to have folks in positions that look like our kids. One of our kids actually brought that to our attention today and named it. We're working with Dr. Hunter for a reason, because nobody does anything through malice, but the lived experiences of our kids is something that might be somewhat foreign to many people who are in front of them. And we have to prepare our teachers and our staff to ensure they understand that how they approach our kids, that they need to do it with dignity and respect and understand the cultural perspective that our kids bring. You mentioned the girl today. That was a great presentation. Our kids told us why. Because when they come into the classroom, teachers don't sometimes understand. It's not because they don't want to. Is sometimes they just don't have that lived experience. And we need to work together to make that occur. And we need to provide the right supports for kids. Restorative practices right now is showing some impact. We need to continue to promote those efforts. We need to give kids voice in this process. Restorative practice does that. It allows kids to talk about why they made a mistake and how they can restore that. That's relatively new, to be honest with you here. Kids need to be more and more part of the conversation. And I think that would really change things. Let's ask our kids why. I think they'll tell us, because they're living it every day. But it's a collective process. I don't have one answer for that. There has to be a whole multifaceted approach.
Mr. Stadion?
Thank you, Madam President. What have you done to inform the parents of special needs students of their rights so that when something happens or if they have a question, they know exactly who to go to, where to go to, what phone call or email to email to?
So the state requires us to give out what's called the procedural safeguards at least annually to every family. It's a very technical document, but that's the regulatory requirement. I'm going to tell you now, and I'll put an infomercial out there. We've been trying to get a special ed PTA here since I've been here. So families who want more information, who want to be part of the solution, I am all for it. Because that's a good avenue to start to educate our families and to help them to break down. It's a very complex system. And a lot of times I understand from the parents' point of view. They said, I don't understand. I've been asking for help for 3 years and you've done nothing. It's not that simple. We have to follow process. And that process is hard for a lot of families. I get it. We've talked internally about how we could begin to provide information to families when they're first referred to the Committee on Special Education, to sit down with those families ahead of time and try to have a non-threatening conversation to help give them some information they need. And that's why I said I don't mind advocates, because advocates to also fill that gap. I'm okay with advocates. But we do our best. I think SEPTA needs to be really reconsidered. I'd be happy to restart that. Pam Peterson tried. We haven't been successful. I'd be happy to revisit that.
What I would like to see is a manual created for special needs parents, the students, that outlines very clearly what exactly they need to do if they have questions at age appropriate. So if it's a student of a kindergartner, this is designed for this age group. Middle school, high school, anything, all different languages. It needs to be digital, it needs to be paper. I would like to see an advocate assigned to every single special needs student. I know that would be expensive, but I think we have surrogates that are appointed by the district at every meeting, annual organizational meeting. We need more parent surrogates, so child surrogates appointed by the district, because we have students that have fallen through the cracks that need surrogates. From the beginning of this year, they still don't have one, and they have not received any services for the entire year because they can't get tested. Another thing I would like to see is...
Can you hang on? Let's have
Sure.
Mr. Ford just going to answer some, and then just hold, okay?
Mr. Baer, can you just share a little bit about the learning profiles that were developed by your team using the model that was done in Schenectady, but you guys created the learning profile that puts it into parent-friendly language, what the programs are?
So we did create, so parents understand if they're being asked to consider a 12-on-1, what's the similarity of need of that program, what's the student profile. We have that built out for all our programs. It's certainly, we have it in an internal, it's a goal book. I'd happy to put that online so parents have access to that. I think your idea of some sort of handbook is a great idea. I actually love the idea. We currently have on our website the process from aging in from preschool to kindergarten. Go look at it. Liliana, I can't take any credit for it. Liliana Schuyler did it before she retired. It's one of the best documents I've ever seen to help parents guide them to from preschool to school aged. So I agree with you. I think that's something we can certainly look forward to.
Go ahead, Mr. Stringer.
And last thing, when you have a student in the 8th grade, they have their CSE meeting at the end of, say April, May of their 8th grade year. Their placement is set for their 9th grade. When they get to high school, if anything is changed in their placement, is it required that they get a new CSE meeting before anything is changed and their IEP is changed? Or does the district put them in a different placement and then later on get it approved by the parents?
So if you read my 70-page document that I accompanied, it talks about one of the real requirements of high school is we have to talk about course of study. It's much more complex. When you're going from 3rd to 4th grade and you're an ICT, you move into an ICT. High school, you have to balance what the IEP says against what the child needs or what the schedule changes that might occur accordingly, either because they wanted something different or because they failed. So sometimes it's not in rhythm where a change is made in the schedule to what the IEP may have said. In those circumstances, we do our best to make sure we capture those in September and October. Changes are made all the way into mid-October sometimes. And we expect it to be a concerted effort between guidance counselors, our staff, and teachers to alert us. When those occur, we're required to have a CSE meeting or do what's called an IEP amendment no meeting, where the parents can sign that they agree to this because they made the decision to change the schedule.
So for that short period of time, it's considered out of compliance?
We've actually had that conversation with SED, and they believe that there is some window there. You do your best. The term used for transfers in circumstances like this is you approximate the IEP. You do your best what you can as long as you don't let it languish. You're within reasonably in compliance.
Ms. Peterson?
Sometimes we like to remind each other, but case managers, the implementation of case managers at the secondary level for exceptional learners was to help address some of those things so that we have a dedicated staff member that is reviewing transcripts as well as schedules to ensure that we are in compliance.
Yes, Mr. Howard.
Last question, Mr. Baer. So what are we doing in the exceptional learners department to ensure that kids, once they grade out, age out, graduate, that they can be productive citizens and so that they're ready for that transition into the real world? Is there anything that we're doing, any type of testing, any type of preparations that we're doing with those kids?
I'm going to try to keep it short. We're required to do that. There's a whole set of things that we have to do accordingly. But we do provide transition services. We have a dedicated transition coordinator who helps support families. You mentioned the school to work programs that we have to make sure kids are stepping out. But we do a lot around that. And we always can do more to make sure kids can step into the adult world. We're actually going to be, the state is actually working with us this year on this because that's our next year compliance indicator is transition.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. Nice job. Very nice. Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Green.
I was just wondering, Mr. Bear, do they have a gifted and talented program here in Newburgh? I should know this, but I don't. Do we have a gifted and talented? Because that kind of falls under the same umbrella because it's outside of general education. So I was just wondering if you have a gifted and talented program here.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear a word of that.
Oh.
I'm better now.
Do we have a gifted and talented program here in Newburgh? Because that kind of falls under the umbrella of special because they have to have challenging work. I'm not aware if we have such a program here in Newburgh of gifted and talented. I should know it, but I don't.
New York State does not does not recognize gifted and talented as a special education thing. There are other states that do. New York State does not. So we don't have a requirement to.
But do we have a gifted and talented program here?
We have the Horizons program. As a point of emphasis, we actually make sure our special education students are part of it.
Ms. Moriarty.
Thank you, Madam President. We do have the Unlimited Horizons program, K through 5 at Horizons.
Thank you.
Everyone, I am really sorry that we're still here.
No, she's not. No, she's not.
We have guests. If we did not have our guests here who've waited all night, I would have an architectural firm here, and could you make it really like short, maybe? Okay. Kimberly, Ms. Roaring, please. Ms. Roaring will be presenting item 4.4, our last presentation, an update on the capital bond project.
Thank you, Dr. Manning Campbell. This evening, the board will receive 2 capital project updates. The first will be done by Ms. Tarcio and Mr. Devine from the Palumbo Group and CPL relative to the work that's in design and underway. And then we'll have an update from Mr. Ritzenthaler from CS Arch regarding the NFA and heritage work.
Good evening. Okay, so we have some good news tonight. I'll go through the design, CTE, and New Windsor, and then I'll hand it off to Bill to talk about construction. With New Windsor, we are this close to going to bid. So we're tying up some loose ends. We do have approval from SED, and we expect to be out to bid in the coming week or weeks. So that's very good news. With the CTE building, more good news. The documents are ready to go to SED. We're waiting on a couple of pieces of paperwork to be able to submit, and we'll be to SED in no time. So that's as brief as I'm going to get with these. Any questions on those 2 before we move on to construction?
Good evening, everybody. I'll try to do the same and get through this fairly quickly. Starting with Heritage on the contractor schedule. The good news, again, we're on time, we're under budget. The project's moving along quite nicely. The building is up. You're starting to see the facade come together and the building really take shape. Glass is starting to go in and the interior fit out is starting to happen. And one thing I think it's really important for everybody to understand is the summer work that's happening over Heritage, and we'll get to Vales Gate in a little bit, is very, very important to discuss because we've been planning this for about 3 months now. We've been having meetings with staff, faculty, everybody you can think of coordinating the summer work to make sure that everybody's coordinated, everybody knows what we're doing, and how we're going to turn the building back over. So upcoming work for the summer at Heritage, again, is probably our biggest building, largest interior fit out for the summer. Again, we're having lots of meetings. We're actually working some nights and weekends to try and prepare and get in there a little early and get some of the work done ahead of time. And as you can see, these are some of the things that we're taking care of. Here's the building looking south and north. I kind of see the overhang there. That's the roof. And then the interior of the space. And there's your split face block facade. Same thing here. Here's a little earlier in the construction. I thought it'd be kind of neat to kind of show you the different layers that happens here on the exterior walls, and on the left-hand side is the view of the interior space. Any questions on Heritage? All right, moving to Vales Gate. Same thing here. We've met with faculty and staff and everybody multiple times, including the contractors. We've actually had a mix of contractors and staff so we can actually answer each other's questions, just for the summer work and make sure we're coordinated. So here, the building's, again, it's up, it's wrapped, it's watertight, roof's on, interior space is being fitted out as we speak on the new addition. The walls are actually painted, which is very exciting. The windows are in. And moving forward. So the upcoming work that we're really taking place again is summertime work. Some of the preparing for the library renovation, the classroom, heat and air conditioning replacement, exterior parking lot, which is a big overhaul on the civil side. Next. Here's a view looking north at the building, the new addition. Here is, on the left is your, I believe, your band room, and on the right is your music room. You can see very tall spaces. Everything's been primed. On your right is walking into the entry door where more of the office space is, and then on the left-hand side is the interior office spaces. Any questions on Vales Gate?
Board members, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Roaring.
Good evening, and this is Mr. Ritzenthaler from CS Arch, and he'll be presenting on NFA Maine and Heritage.
Good evening. It's nice to be here. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible once we get the presentation up. Here we go. Am I not able to advance it? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, perfect. So we're going to briefly go through Heritage Middle School, the site circulation project, the emergency project for NFA, the elevated concrete walkway, and the NFA locker room renovations. I always like to show this slide because as we've focused all night tonight, it's all about improving educational settings for kids. So we always got to keep the children in mind as we go through this process. So let's talk about Heritage Middle School, just to brief everybody on what's being done. We are obviously going to be creating lanes of additional queuing space to get all of those parents that are waiting for their pickups of their child, get them off of Union Avenue. You know, backing up on Union Avenue has been a big problem. We are going to make some improvements to the bus queuing areas, giving proper drop-off sidewalks along that bus queue area. We're going to be improving the throat of the Heritage intersection and improving the asphalt with replacement all the way up and including the bus loop itself. And one thing you will notice is there is a second access drive to the campus, and this is something the county has agreed to let us put in. And so there you can see the second access drive. That was a big coup. And you will also see we are adding additional parking. So we're really going to start to separate the circulation into faculty, which will come into one entry, and the buses and the parent drop-offs and pickups in the other entrance. So we're going to split that traffic and really create a much better circulation on site. Just to give you just a remembrance of the overall budget, which we have presented before, the total budget for this project is $3.7 million. For the schedule, we did go up to the Education Department earlier this year, April 18th, so we're really right on track. We anticipate early August we'll be out of SED. They might even beat that based on their current schedule. And we're looking to bid this in the fall. Perfect time to bid as contractors are queuing up work for summer. We'd like to award contracts this year and then begin the work in spring. And we would begin with school still in session because they can begin to prep for that new road entrance, the new entry exit. And then once students are out in full, we'll take the remainder of the campus so we can do all the heavy lifting with the remainder of the work. And we're looking at substantial completion August 30th, and we certainly think that that's more than achievable. So this project is right on track, right where we should be. So now let's talk about the emergency concrete replacement at NFA. This is in the back of the building. This top of the drawing would face where the track and field complex is. So north is to the right. And it's that little red area there, which is an elevated slab, which is in failure. We do have it separately supported with jack posts, which are temporary jack posts to keep it upright. And we also do have impact scaffolding underneath this section of the building as well. So there's no issue of safety with the students using these entry and exits. And it's that slab, and we're actually going to be replacing the stairs that are in severe disrepair associated with this elevated slab. So there you can see the jack posts, and this little lobby is actually a portion of the slab that used to be on the exterior of the building. That's also going to be replaced. So it's a very intricate project that is going to be really difficult to complete, but we're going to get it done this summer. Has to be done in the summer. So we've gone up to the education department with this project. Here's some of the construction drawings to show you the extent of the removals. We're going to remove the entire slab, all of the stairs. We're going to be making some improvements to improve the amount of daylight and limit access to that underside of the fitness room as well, so that we have eliminated some of the damage to the underside. From a budgeting perspective, we did know that this was going to exceed what was put in the 2019 bond referendum. The current project estimate is $1.3 million. I'm going to review with you what the bids came back with in a couple of minutes. We did have $675,000 in the bond referendum, so we knew we had a gap in the funding. So let's talk about the schedule. So you did declare this an emergency March 1st, and that was very critical to allow us to proceed with this with all speed. We did develop the mitigation design, and it was completed on May 15th. This went into the education department on the 17th, and we went right out to bid the next day. So we anticipate an approval soon from the education department. They'll pick it up with preferential review because it's an emergency. We did solicit bids from May 16th to May 30th, so we did receive bids, and hopefully we anticipate you awarding the contract tonight. It's under your consideration later on in your agenda. We would begin construction June 26th, the day the students let out. We begin because we have to complete this over the summer because it affects required egress doors to the school. So substantial completion September 1st, and then we'll have some wrap up and paperwork, and we'll look to close out by September 30th. So we did take bids, as I said. We received 4 bids. One of the bidders is not on this list because they were disqualified because they didn't follow the requirements of the bid related to the project labor agreement. So we did receive 3 bids, and you can see the low bid amount, and we have vetted the contractor. Profex is a very well-known contractor in the area, and you're using them on other projects. Their bid was $1,150,000, so a little bit less than what we had estimated. And so you can see the gap to be covered by the general fund of $475,000, so a little bit less than what we anticipated. And so we're hopeful to proceed with all speed with that. So let's talk briefly about the NFL locker room renovations. So again, in that same area where that elevated concrete replacement is going to happen, right at that lower level is the boys' locker room. It's an area about 5,250 square feet. Just quick pictures of what that looks like. It really is dilapidated. We're looking to have boys' locker rooms to serve 160 students, team rooms for both boys and girls, gender-neutral locker room for 20 students, 2 offices, one for the boys' locker room, one for the girls' locker room, some laundry storage, and then seasonal storage for all the sports. So we have vetted a design with this, working with the district's athletic director and coaching staff. We're going to continue to do that through the design process. We're starting the development of the construction documents, and we look to submit to the State Education Department on November 6th. And we hope to come out of the Education Department in March, where we can then bid that for award of contracts and start of construction July 1st of next year, with the anticipation of completing sometime probably in October. We won't be able to complete that over the course of a singular summer. It's just too significant a project. It's we're literally going to gut renovate the area. So we're not trying to set our hopes on saying we're going to be done in September. We won't. So we want to be realistic and plan for that, understand that we think it's going to be into October before we're complete. I think that was it. Is there any questions? That's a lot of information.
Board members, questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tonight, I present item 4.5 for your consideration.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion on
Questions.
4.5?
I would like to separate out 4.5.
Okay, you want to amend 4.5?
I want to amend 4.5, yes.
Thank you. What would that amendment be?
I want to strike the resolution and replace it with a new resolution.
Okay. Could somebody read that? Ed, can you read this? It's a similar, I think the lawyer had to change the words in the contract, but we're still getting the, go ahead, Ms. Caroline.
The major change is that our start date would be July 1st as opposed to June 15th.
That's the change. That's the major change.
Yes, the new resolution is for July 1st start date.
Correct.
Okay, so everybody understand what the change in the resolution is from June 15th to July 1st, the start date of the contract? Okay? So I
Point of
need,
order to have it read.
okay, would you, somebody read it, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education determines that it is in the interest of the Newburgh Free Library to lease certain space at the Newburgh Mall for the purpose of operating a town branch of the Newburgh Free Library. Therefore, be it further resolved, whereas the Board of Education as lead agency determines that license agreement between the Newburgh Mall Ventures LLC and Newburgh Free Library proposed action is a Type 2 action pursuant to Section 617.5C10 of the State Environmental Quality Review Act regulations, routine activities of educational institutions, and will not have any significant environmental impacts, and no further review of the proposed action is required. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education is authorized to execute a 5-year lease agreement between the Newburgh Mall Ventures LLC licensor and the Newburgh Free Library licensee for the period from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2028 for space number 1036 at the annual license fee of $57,600, reduced by 3 months of free rent during renovation, reducing the annual license fee to $43,200 during the period from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, as presented to the Board at this meeting. A copy of said license agreement shall be incorporated by reference within the minutes of this meeting.
So I need a motion to amend. Roll call to amend. Do I need to ask questions first and then David? No, okay. So roll call to amend.
Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight-Iron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Okay, now there's an amended motion on the floor. I need an amendment on the floor. I need a motion. Questions or discussion? I'd like to say I'm so happy about this. This is really good news. Any other comments? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
Thank you. I'd like to present item 4.6 for your consideration.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Yes, Mr. Stradiron, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Duray.
Are there any internal documents, investigations, or reports that are related to human resources that the board hasn't seen yet and would need to see it in order to make an informed decision on this vote?
Dr. Campbell?
Madam I'm really unclear as to what the question is. I'm presenting a contract for a member of my team. I am not sure why we're having this conversation now.
In order to make an informed decision, are there any documents that are in possession of the superintendent that the board has not seen that would help make a decision on this vote?
Mr. Shaw?
If there are investigations that are ongoing that have not come to fruition yet for presentation to the board, that wouldn't be a basis to evaluate administrative personnel. So I don't think that there's a yes answer to your question.
Is there a completed written document that the board has not seen yet related to this position or this division?
Do we need to go into exec for this, David?
I don't think that this question is going to yield a relevant answer or discussion.
Okay, so are there any other questions or comments? Yes, sir. Wait, Mr. Duray first, please. It's okay, go ahead.
Two comments. One is we're having a very long day, but I would like to remind everyone here that 79 years ago today, some people had a very long day on a beach. Some people had their last day on a beach. And we enjoy the freedoms we have, the ability to salute the flag at the beginning of these meetings because of those people, and we owe them a very sincere thanks. That was kind of off the record. More on the record. Thank you for allowing me to speak. About a year ago, the superintendent was selected as the CEO of the district after an extensive search by the then Board of Education. At the time, I was not on the board and not part of the process. Several members of that board are still current members. There were 7 members eligible to vote. All voted yes. 5 of those members are here tonight as board members. Obviously, despite some differences on the board, the feeling was unanimous that the best new leader for the district had been selected. Although I did not vote, I will say after working with Dr. Manning Campbell for the last year, I sincerely believe they did make the best choice. The district at the time was in disarray due to previous leadership, and I use that term loosely, and required a strong, decisive leader to help the community recover and chart a course for the success of the district. When you chart a course, it's usually going forward, not in reverse, forward thinking. If you had not had the opportunity to speak to Dr. Manning Campbell, anyone in the room, I strongly encourage you to do so. Be you a parent, a student, teacher, faculty member, or simply a member of the Newburgh community. Be prepared for an open, honest, genuine dialogue. Unlike her predecessor, Dr. Manning Campbell has inserted herself directly into the Newburgh community and Orange County in a very positive manner. She attends after-school events weekend events, and you could see every time we have these meetings, champions her executive team and champions the school district at every opportunity. Pretty good ambassador for the Newburgh School District. Her passions. She is passionate about early learner literacy, knowing that reading is a key to success. She wants to bring back those that may not have been successful within the school district and offer learning of people who have since maybe not graduated, but also realize that if we teach them to read and some basics, they become contributors to the population, contributors to the community. She regularly meets with parents and educators, acts on comments and suggestions. She is the face of the district and very visible, unlike you see in a lot of school districts. Dr. Manning Campbell was recently evaluated by the entire school board. That's the process, part of the contract process. By contract, members of the board either offered no salary adjustment or an adjustment that is agreed on by the entire board before being ratified. The compensation adjustment Dr. Manning Campbell is seeking is very well in line with many school districts of similar size and demographics in New York State. I'm in business. I didn't write this down, but if you were running a $300 million business, I could assure you, you would make much more than educators make. As cliche as sports analogies are, I'm going to risk one anyway. On most professional teams, there is a general manager who manages the business and a team manager who manages the team. On successful teams, each understands their roles. We all have witnessed a general manager who hires the most successful manager only to watch the team fail due to the meddling of the general manager. The new manager wants to shed some players, keep some key players, hire new talent. Yet the GM gets involved. The change doesn't happen because the manager is stifled. Not a great recipe for a sports team, and not really a great recipe for a school district. The role of the school board is not to decide who is in the lineup. Like a general manager, our role is to assist the superintendent, who is the team manager, with decisions on programs, spending, budgeting, and offer recommendations on key personnel. However, it is the superintendent's team to build and field. If the team is successful, it's a victory for the district. If the team fails, the superintendent can be removed from office just as easily as a coach can be fired. That's the risk the manager or superintendent takes for their hiring decisions. Our job is not to meddle and second-guess every personnel decision made by the superintendent. Over the last year, the superintendent has evaluated her team and is asking that some key members stay with the team based on her evaluation. You saw the presentation tonight. That's the team. There has been substantial discussion over the last several weeks regarding some key members of the superintendent's executive team and contract extensions. 2 weeks ago, several members of the community stood and spoke about this topic, as they are entitled to do. That's a public forum. Unfortunately, some of the discussion was accompanied by threats that if board members don't yield to their wishes, they would ensure that those board members would not get reelected. I'm only speaking for myself here. 1, I don't yield to threats. 2, I sincerely don't care if I get reelected. I do this job only for one reason, and that is to move the needle on the graduation rate in the city of Newburgh and this school district. That's the only reason I sit here. Thank you. Everything else is a distraction. We heard comments about this is what the voters wanted. The reality, and I'm going to insult some people here, including myself, is getting elected to the board in this district is based on the friends and family plan. If you have enough friends and have enough family, you get elected. Something we need to work on, the apathy in the school district for voting. We can't say there's a mandate when 1,200 people out of tens of thousands cast a vote. That's not a mandate. I don't know what you would classify it as. As a side note, the voter apathy, I mentioned that. We heard the contracts don't expire for a year. We have plenty of time to decide. That's false. That's put out there and it's false. A couple of contracts expire June 30th, 2024. That's true. The contract language has a simple clause that states the assistant superintendent shall, which means will, be entitled to at least 1 year notice in writing in the event the board intends to not renew the contract. So it's not a contract extension. Really what we're dealing with is a contractual obligation that we owe to these people. These contracts were approved by people sitting at this table 3 years ago. That means the go, no-go is up to the current board, not the board to be seated. They'll have plenty of time to have decisions to make. My decision on this will be based on what I believe is best for the district, students, and executive team. In all the rhetoric about not extending a contract, I have not heard or read the answer to, then what? So some folks got their way. Then what? Is a district that railroads high-level people out attractive to another potential administrator? I would think not. I wouldn't go to work for an employer. People look at Glassdoor and all sorts of things before they evaluate employers. Especially given the short supply of qualified people. Is a board that is in conflict with the superintendent good for the district? Is it good for the community? People in this room will tell you I have no allegiance to either people or processes and often have an unpredictable voter comment. At one point or another, I guarantee I've made everybody in the room unhappy. But they will also tell you I'm fair and try to step back and evaluate things using common sense combined with 40 years of managing people and operating businesses. The superintendent deserves the respect, number one, and confidence, number two, of the board to hire the team she believes can help the district succeed. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
No.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Ms. Green? No. Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
No.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Five.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Keep going. You gotta go on. Okay. 4.8.
4.7.
7.
I present item 4.7 for your consideration, and thank you, Mr. Duray.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion? Yes, sir. It should be learners.
4.7, correct?
Yes.
I must have a mis-
So that
Mine says
needs to be
exceptional student.
amended?
Okay, please.
So make a motion to amend it.
Okay, motion to amend, please.
Can you tell us how you would like to
4.7,
amend it,
should be
please?
resolution to extend the assistant superintendent for exceptional learners.
Thank
employment
you.
agreement.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please, to it. Okay. Second. Roll call to amend.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion on this item? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
No.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
No.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
No.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Thank you. I present item 4.8 for your consideration.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion on this item? Yes, sir.
Just a question. This person was hired, I believe, in May of 2022. Is that correct?
It was April. I believe it was April, Mr. Stritter.
Maybe the end of April of 2022. So this raise starts in July of 2022? It's a retroactive. So the contract begins, say it's April or May of 2022, and then they get a raise a month and a half later of 2.5%. That seems a little bit quick.
The resolution that's being put forward would be retroactive from July 1st, 2022.
So that would mean they would get a raise of 2.5% for a month and a half or 2 months of work, of being employed.
I think it's more complicated than that. I think if you look at the salaries for the Assistant Superintendent for Finance, and you look at the salary that was presented, and you look at the adjustment we're trying to make, it brings it in alignment with other Assistant Superintendents for Finance across the region. It is our recommendation, I believe the recommendation of the Superintendent, for it to be retroactive to July 1st, as I stated.
I believe this is the first Assistant Superintendent that will be in the contract guaranteed raise for the next 3 years.
I disagree. I believe my contract has the raises. I believe the other assistant superintendents do as well.
They actually have, where the number is outlined 2.5%?
I believe so for the other assistant superintendents. I see nodding heads. That was done about 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
No.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mrs. Straight-Iron?
No.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
No.
Thank you all. Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Manning Campbell. So it's my turn. So I have item 5.1 for you tonight. I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Questions or discussion on this item? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Lamar?
No.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mrs. Straight-Iron?
No.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
No.
Mr. Howard?
We're going to move on to our board committees. Our Audit and Finance Committee, Mr. Levinstein.
Can I make a comment, please?
Sure, if you'd like to.
Okay, thank you. In response to Mr. DeRay's comment, I heard what he said, but I voted no tonight because the people who voted for me asked me to vote no, and I am their voice. In addition to that, I do believe that the contracts of the 3 unions should be satisfied before we look at central office. They are in the buildings with our kids, and I think that their contracts should be satisfied first. So since these extensions have been approved, I can't wait to see what the contracts are for the 3 unions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, you had your hand up.
Yes, I'd just like to read one thing that came from the newsletter. Okay. It says, after the election, there is to be no quid pro quo. But at that same time, newly appointed board members, as well as the older ones, work for the benefit of the district, not because you voted for something you knew your constituents wanted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to our Audit and Finance Committee. Mr. Levinstein.
Thank you, Madam President. So the Audit and Finance Committee met at 5 p.m. tonight. We discussed the 19 resolutions on tonight's finance agenda, which include 2 technology resolutions, and we also discussed the curriculum and instruction resolution on conferences that's on tonight's CNI agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levinstein. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction Elementary, Mrs. Moriarty.
Thank you, Madam President. Elementary Curriculum and Instruction presents item 7.1 for your consideration.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion on this item? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Duray? Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Lamar?
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my item.
Thank you, Ms. Moriarty. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Secondary, Dr. Farrow.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight, I have item 8.1 to present. There are 6 different groups of conferences.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Duray? Ms. Green? Mr. Howard? Mr. Lamar? Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Farrow. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Exceptional Learners, Mr. Bayer.
Thank you, Madam President. The Exceptional Learner Division has item 9.1 for the board's consideration.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion on this item? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Duray? Ms. Green? Mr. Howard? Mr. Lamar? Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Mr. Baer. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Ms. Roaring.
Thank you, Madam President. The Finance Division presents items 10.1 to 10.19 this evening for the board's consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Yes, sir.
1010 and 1017.
Any others? I'd like to entertain a motion on all but 1010 and 1017. Questions or discussion on the bulk of the items? Yes, sir.
On 1018, who reviews the cost and the technical specs on the laptops?
So the laptops, we researched what we felt would be best for the Learning Technology Grant. Those specific laptops allow the functionality to help with some digital citizenship activities and plans that we are going to be moving forward with.
The cost of those laptops, they're top of the line laptops, and that cost is very high. So I'm just curious, what's the process to get that approved?
So the reason why the cost of those laptops are a little bit more because they come with additional programming attached to it. And for the Learning Technology Grant, these laptops will be given to teachers that are working on the curriculum development, and they're going to need a more high-powered laptop to deal with some of the functional programs. They're also going to be working with digital literacy. So these are given to the committee, to the teachers that are going to be doing the curriculum writing. This is the second time we've done this. There was an initial group that did get when they first started it, and this will be just more people are coming on board, and we want to make sure that everyone has the same equipment.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the bulk of the items? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Let's move on to item 10.10. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
Could someone just explain what this proposal is for?
Ms. Roaring?
Item 10.10 and 10.11 are both a result of the RFP that we issued for new architectural and engineering services for our May 2019 proposition.
Back in 2015, I believe this same company was, we had some issues. Was that taken into account when the bidding process was done?
This particular company has done business with the NFL Library and is currently doing business with the district in construction and doing both of them successfully.
I believe the president remembers this.
I don't remember the particulars, though, Mr. Sterling.
I don't
I'm
remember the
sorry.
particulars either, but I do know that, I mean, things change over years, so I understand. I'm hoping that whatever issues there were in the past, can we make sure that doesn't happen again? Just maybe you need to get some background on the history so that you can understand what to look for. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on 10.10? Roll call, Ms. Clerk?
Ms. Green? No. Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar?
No.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo? Yes. Mr. Straight Iron?
No.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
We're going to move on to item 10.17. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Yes, Mr. Stradiron.
Do you have guarantees from the bus companies involved that all of the aides and the drivers are certified?
Who's going to respond?
Madam President, I would just ask if we would, when the agenda goes out on Fridays, it's important that we have this information so we can provide a response, that if a board member has a question, we don't wait till we get on the floor and we're asked on the spot. It would serve the public better if we had this information ahead of time so we can appropriately respond. We will provide a response in the weekly. Or moving forward, it will be really helpful and most professional if we can get this ahead of time instead of on the floor.
Okay.
Do we have a process for making sure there's certifications when we give contracts to people?
Ms. Roaring?
The RFB and state law does require that the providers of transportation provide the district with certain documentation around the employees that they assign to our district, yes.
So is that a guarantee that everyone who drives our children are certified?
Let him answer, and then I'll get to you, Mr. Walker.
Well, okay, this is unrelated anyway.
Go ahead. I got sidetracked.
It's okay.
I apologize.
It's late.
Stop.
Based on the information that the district provided recently, they knew that certain certifications were not in place as of a few months ago. Since they knew that, how do we know now that going forward, that the contracts are being awarded to a company that everyone who is driving our children is certified properly? Because some of these are dealing with students with special needs, and there's special certifications that they have to have. Thank you.
Mr. Shaw?
That's really a responsibility of administration to review the background, the certifications, drivers, and also any special needs certifications that there might be.
Are there any other questions on 10.17? Yes, Mr. Walker? Is it? Go ahead.
Yeah, I promise. Okay. In that,
Renee?
can I start? In that issue that I referred to, it also stated that issues concerning malfeasance, policy, inaccuracies, and gossip are ironed out during executive sessions when the board is supposed to be able to present itself and members are supposed to be able to say what's on their minds honestly so the arguments can take place there, not in the street, not through some gadfly blogger, but in the executive session. I'll end it there, because if you don't get it about these gotcha moments and all like that, it's got to stop. It impedes progress.
Ms. Green?
I have questions about that because several parents, not several, but 3 parents got up here and spoke tonight about issues with the bus. So I do have some questions about that. here so I can be heard more clearly. 3 parents tonight got up and said that they had issues with this bus. So it's not just one person that I was thinking of. I got new information tonight. So I do have questions about this bus company because there were 3 parents in the audience tonight that said they had issues with their kids on the bus. So I do have questions about that.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Lamar?
No.
Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mrs. Straight Iron?
No.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
No.
Ms. Green?
No.
Ms. Roaring?
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes our items.
Thank you, Ms. Roaring. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. McLemore.
Thank you, Madam President. On the Human Resources agenda, I have items 11.1 through 11.15 for your consideration on tonight.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Yes, sir. Any others? I'd like to entertain a motion on 11.1 through 11.14. Questions or discussion on the bulk of the items? Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mrs. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Let's move on to item 11.15. I'd like to entertain a motion. Questions or discussion? Do you have a question?
Didn't we already vote on this? Was this change?
That was tabled the last time.
No, it was tabled.
So they put it back up.
Was it tabled or did it fail? It failed.
Oh, it failed? It failed.
So can it be brought back at the
David?
next meeting for this, without anybody changing?
Yes, Robert's rules that might otherwise indicate that it couldn't be brought back except by someone who voted against it would not apply in the context of agenda setting under the education law. That takes precedence. Robert's rules being rules of order, not rules of substance. So it's rightly on the agenda.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
I believe the discussion about the overall hiring was about supporting the school with experienced administrators. What will the administration do to support South Middle School with brand-new administrators?
Ms. Peterson.
So the recommendation was placed back in front of the board because throughout this year, under Dr. Manning Campbell's leadership, executive cabinet members have had learning partners with building level administration. Myself and Dr. Freeman Mack have been learning partners with South Middle School. As a part of that, we have really got to know the school culture. We've been a part of their SLT and their ILT meetings. We've attended many events and programming at South Middle School, as well as really listening to the staff instructionally. The candidate that the board has in front of you this evening has an extensive knowledge in professional development around L students. South Middle School being one of the most populated of L programs with most students. We feel that the instruction of Ls is definitely one of the learning goals of South Middle School, and this is why this candidate was chosen. She currently serves in a role as a teacher leader and a professional developer in her current district as an L educator of administrators and teachers. So we felt that it was important to bring a candidate that is needed instructionally to our district, and this is why Mrs. Barrios is being placed back up.
Thank you. That information helps me to be more positive about this.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Walker.
A chance to discuss these things openly and honestly during the executive sessions. Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank
Might
you.
do better. Oh, you're
Go ahead, Mr. Stradone.
We're not provided any opportunity in executive session. It's this, boom, out the door. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Excuse me, I'm sorry. You have a responsibility to open your emails and read the agenda on Fridays when it's sent to you, and not wait to get on the floor where a teacher or another staff member sends a text message about the items that are on the agenda, okay? On Friday, this is sent to you, to all board members. If you have an issue with a resolution, please reach out to myself or Ms. Novotny so we can clear up any misconception or any misinformation that you may have. We are here to serve.
I didn't have a problem with this one.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. McLemore?
Madam President, I'm sorry. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. We're going to move on to the Clerk of the Board, Mrs. Novotny.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the approval of the minutes from May 2023 regular meeting and May 23, 2023 special meeting.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Lamar? Mr. Levinstein? Item, Madam President.
Thank you, Mrs. Novotny. Okay, now you're all going to hate me. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: employment history of particular individuals and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion. Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Straight Iron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Mr. Duray? Ms. Green? Mr. Howard? Mr. Lamar? Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Mineo?
Yes, we will not be conducting business after this executive session. So, thank you.